to maximize voluntary assistance of will, minimize involuntary imposition of will. Basically, don't force people to do things they don't consent to doing. So it's a church because there's doctrine. Ooh, I got a camera now. Good.
Wow. Yo, Vastus, what's up? Vastus is my best friend.
I don't know who that is. Oh, the guy in the audience. That's nice.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Anybody else got any questions, comments about God, atheism, politics, whatever? Raise your hand, whatever. Slow day. Hello, Gary and Nihilism and Trillion. Good to see you guys. Gary's in Australia. How's it going? I'm planning to go to Australia hopefully next year, do some debates there. So if you know any big Christian or Muslim organizations who would be willing to debate, let me know, or contact them and ask them, or on my behalf, go ahead. I'll be happy to debate any big churches down there. Would be great. 60-second skeptic. I don't remember if you want me to use your real name or not. I was like about to say it, but then I was like, maybe he doesn't want me to say that. You got any questions, comments, atheism, God, arguments for and against the existence of God, morality, politics? Feel free to raise your hand. Hey, Woody, how's it going? Invite to speak. Chad, what is up? I cannot hear you. Might have to leave and rejoin because I cannot hear you. Might be your mic issue or might be my mic issue. I have no idea. Anybody else got any questions, comments, stuff? Atheism, does God exist? Arguments for God, evolution, morality, philosophy, politics. If you got any questions, raise your hand. And let's see if Chad can work his mic now. Still can't hear you, Chad. No audio. No, you're deafened. I did not do that. All right. Chad, did you get your mic to work? All right. You're still okay. Nope, still can't hear you. Can anybody else hear you? Put it in the chat if you guys can hear him. Because I cannot. Hey, Gorski, can you hear Chad saying anything? Is it my side or his side? If you could answer, it'd be great. Can you guys hear each other? Because I can't hear either of you. Might be my side. Can... Buddha Black, feel free to come up and say things that I can hopefully hear. Yeah, Woody, I know that you guys in the chat can only hear me because if it's not going to my audio, then definitely you always won't be able to hear it. I'll refresh, see if that helps. Hey, I can hear you now. It was my side.
Oh yeah. Okay, that's a bet.
All right, what's up, Chad?
What's up, dog?
Not much.
Just up on Sunday in the morning, huh?
You got any arguments or evidence for God, philosophy, morality, that kind of stuff?
God bless for this day, wouldn't you say?
No, I don't think God exists. And if he did exist, he would be immoral for all the immoral things he's done.
Well, I say blessed be the day for God makes it possible. And the reason I say that is because I believe God to be the framework of reality. And Christianity and Abrahamic religions postulate that, but they do so in a less scientific and much more poetic and metaphorical way. But nonetheless, the primary ideology that I get when I interpret the text is that God is the fabric that constitutes reality around you.
Do you think God is conscious?
I believe necessarily so, yes.
Well, that part I don't understand why, because it seems like the fundamental nature of reality is probably best explained by like a quantum field. I don't see why we would need a conscious entity there. It doesn't seem like there's any evidence consciousness can exist outside of brains, and so it seems very ad hoc to think that the fundamental nature of reality is
that
conscious.
Consciousness, as you described it, is particular to the human brain?
That's the only evidence we have. I don't think it's necessarily the case, but we have no evidence that it exists outside of the brain. So to say that the fundamental nature of the reality is conscious is like to say the fundamental nature of reality is made of a pineapple. We have no evidence of a smaller, like micro pineapple. The only ones we know about are.
There's no evidence of a micro consciousness because the definition of a consciousness implicitly is macro. Now,
Well, I don't think the definition. It's not the definition that's macro. It's that all of the empirical examples are macro.
yeah, by definition, you can't really get a micro example. It's
No, like you could, like it's logically possible to have micro consciousness. There's just no evidence it exists. Kind of like a unicorn. Like you can imagine a unicorn. There's just no evidence they exist, and so there's no definition.
Let me put it like this to you, because you brought up quantum mechanics, and I'll use this as an example. I believe that, like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, it's impossible to know the position and the velocity simultaneously. So when I say to you, consciousness on a micro level, they're equally antithetical to each other. Meaning that similarly as you can never know the position and velocity simultaneously on a micro scale, that implicitly means that the thing that you interpret as consciousness is a macro phenomenon. So you cannot see it on a micro scale.
No, that's not true. There's no philosopher or scientist who thinks that. So the definition of consciousness is just what it's like to be something. And so if there's what it's like to be something, then it would be conscious. And then there are many ways to prove that that could exist on a quantum level to the same degree it could exist on the micro level. But the epistemic question just doesn't matter. The question is are there any examples of this that we know of? The answer is no. And so is it possible? Sure, absolutely, it's possible. But there's just no evidence of it happening yet. And so the fact that we haven't seen it is reason that we shouldn't think that that would be applied at that level. It's like, why don't we see baseballs?
That we perhaps, and I see this happening tremendously a lot with deeply religious people, and I see it happening a lot with sort of, you could say, the opposite crowd, the atheist crowd on this, is the belief or the superimposing of human qualities onto what is described as a non-created, omniscient, omnipotent being. So, for example, morality being one of those things. Like somehow superimposing that upon God, to me, is very confusing.
Well, I sort of agree, but I think that's what you're doing with consciousness. I think that consciousness is a human trait, and because we think it's important, we then apply that to the fundamental nature of reality. And I think as a
No, I hear you.
hypothesis,
I
that's
follow you
fine.
there, right? I'm following you there. Let me jump in on so you know who you're talking to. Now, I follow you there, but my mic. It's more so the fact that consciousness, as we describe it, again, is very unique to a human because that's our only interpretation of it. We have never been a frog. We have never been an alien or a cockroach. We have only experienced life through this shell. And for that reason, our definition of consciousness is confined to this shell. Do you agree with this?
No, because our definition of consciousness is just what it's like to be something. So our definition of
And the only
consciousness,
thing we can be is a human, correct?
the only thing we can be is a human, but our definition of consciousness is not based off of what we can be. It's based off of what any conscious thing could be. And so there are hypothetical spirits and souls and hypothetical conscious entities that don't have bodies. And we think dogs are conscious and cats. Consciousness, as defined in philosophy, is just what it's like to be something. That's it. There's no assumption of humanity involved.
Does consciousness imply self-awareness?
No.
So would it be adequate for me to say that an electron is conscious? Though not self-aware, it clearly interacts with the environment and has a set of properties that are unique to its being.
No. So consciousness again means what it's like to be something, have a essentially a conscious experience, a qualia. And so if an electron had a qualia, then sure, but there's no evidence of that. And
But
so
it does, doesn't it? An electron
no.
behaves in an incredibly particular way that we have deduced down to such an astronomical accuracy that you and I have this conversation right now through the literal airwaves, right?
Why do you
That
think
are
that
transmitted
implies?
by exactly the phenomenon of electromagnetism, the transfer
Well,
of
why do you
electricity
think that
through
has anything
electrons.
to do with what it's like to be an electron? Like the fact that it has a property doesn't mean there's a fact of the matter of what it's like to be an electron.
Well, to be an electron is to be attracted to a positive charge, like a proton.
No.
Effectively, in
No,
science,
what
right?
the properties of the thing is not the same as what it's like to be the thing. So what it's like to be the thing is like if we transferred its conscious experience or your conscious experience into it, would you have sight, sound, taste, thoughts, etc., etc.? It's not the
But that,
fact
that
that it has
again,
properties. Like rocks have properties. But if we were to transfer your conscious to their consciousness, what would you experience? And in the case of a rock, you'd experience nothing, no thoughts,
well,
no
that's what
sounds.
that's what I mean to allude to, and that's the primary question I asked you. Does it infer self-awareness? Because sight, taste, all these
Well,
things
just to
infer
clarify,
self-awareness.
self-awareness is the ability to think that you have a consciousness. So, like, I can recognize that I have a consciousness. Dogs can't, cats can't. They don't have self-awareness. They have
Let me put it
consciousness,
like that.
but not
Let me put it
self-awareness.
like this to you. I understand, but hear my distinction, right? Sensing something and then reacting to it happens to anyone. A car has an oxygen sensor, and there's a certain amount of oxygen that intake, and there's a adequate response. Correct.
Sure.
Same is true with your body. You intake oxygen, there's some biological response, and there's an output. So
Yep.
you do that. The perception of the smell of oxygen is consciousness. The perception of the taste of the cake
Yep.
is consciousness. Do you agree?
Yes.
Correct. So when I asked you, is self-awareness, to me, self-awareness is the perception of the taste. Like
Oh,
again,
okay. So just to
I
clarify,
intake oxygen,
that's
so does a
that's just
car
qualia.
intake
So
oxygen,
just to
right?
clarify, that's just qualia. So self-awareness in philosophy means the ability to recognize you have a self. It is the conscious ability to say, I am an individual, I have these properties. It is the ability to look at yourself from a third person. That's what self-awareness is.
And do you agree
But
that this is
consciousness is
triggered?
just the thing you're talking about. Just qualia is the thing you're talking about where you have an experience. And so I would agree that having an experience is what it's like to be something. And I agree that like cars have an intake valve and things where they have action reaction things in their bodies. But the question is do those action reaction things get transferred in some type of processing unit to acquire data and build a model of the world at which this information is then used to add to that model? The answer is probably no. And so just having an interaction, you would need a further step to show that that interaction is then computed into some kind of consciousness processing unit. Um, to
Well, we're
make it
talking
apply
about the
to.
nature of what we define as consciousness, right? And so I asked you about the self-perception because to me, that's the primary distinction. Again, car intakes oxygen, so do I. The
Yep.
distinction between us is that I have a perception of the intake of oxygen. A car doesn't. That's your argument, and I believe that's fair. And the distinction and the reason you are capable of becoming self-aware is because you have the mechanisms by which to perceive the qualia, like the taste of a cake, right? And so
Those are the same thing, yeah. So like you're
right,
aware
so when
because
I
you
ask
have the
you, is
mechanisms to be aware.
self-awareness necessary for consciousness?
Well, no, again, you're using
Wouldn't it
self-awareness
be-
wrong. Your use of self-awareness is technically wrong. Self-awareness is specifically the ability to recognize you're conscious. That's what self-awareness is. The ability to be aware that you are a self. It is not
correct. No,
conscious.
I'm saying to you, do you think that occurs in an instant, or do you think that that is a thing you grow into? Like as your lived experience as a human,
grow into,
when you
for
were
sure.
a toddler, you grow into it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
How do you grow into the perception that you are a human, that you exist?
You
Through
have
your
a
ability to experience the qualia, like to taste the cake and to taste another cake, and then 20 more, and then you're like, whoa, hold on, I'm experiencing something. And as you get older, 3, 4, 5, suddenly you're like, wait, I'm a human, right? And this all is occurring because you have the self-perception of the intake of things.
Well, no, they don't have self-perception. Again, self-perception happens at usually like 4 or 5. So self-perception is a thing that develops over time where you gain the cognitive ability to recognize you are a self, they are a different person, and you can interact in some kind of a social way because of this distinction. That happens later in life. I think 4 and 5 is the age that scientists have discovered that this occurs, and the consciousness happens very much earlier. So they become conscious very much earlier than that. I think that's like potentially in the womb you can become conscious. I don't know exactly when that
Yeah, but at that
happens.
point in time, the conscious argument to me becomes like a mechanical response argument, damn near. Like literally, because like, well, okay, a fetus in the womb of a mother, like, okay, you can argue that maybe it experiences pain, but pain is just a trigger. Like it's literally like a trigger to the nervous system.
Right, right. So I agree
of
with
your
you
body.
that
it's your self-perception of pain that matters, and we have proven this completely
no,
with painkillers. We have completely proven this with doping the brain up, and you can
wait,
cut
wait, wait.
someone's leg off
What
in
you're
front
saying
of
doesn't
them,
make any sense.
and then we'll
So
look
wait,
at you with a blank face.
Dogs experience pain, but don't have self-awareness. And it's still important to give them painkillers because they're suffering. So it has nothing to do with self-awareness, the importance of not causing suffering or not causing pain. Pain can be simply a response that the body has, and it's unpleasant. And even if the dog doesn't recognize I am a self and there is another self over there, it's still important to give the dog painkillers to stop the pain. Self-awareness is
I
irrelevant.
think there would be a mountain, and I truly mean a mountain of people, the overwhelming majority, who would contest dogs are self-aware, especially dog.
Well, I'm just using that as an
I don't know if
example. So
own
you can
one.
say, I don't know, whatever smallest animal you
It's
want.
inadequate. Yeah, but a dog is clearly self-aware, conscious, right? And nobody's gonna
No,
contest
self-awareness
that.
is again separate from consciousness. So self-awareness is the ability to say, I am a self. There's another self over there. I don't think dogs have that ability. I think that is again limited to higher apes. We've done tests on this. Like there's a test of like showing animals a mirror and seeing if they can recognize that it is them in the mirror or if they can't. And that's one of the ways to establish if the animal has self-awareness or if it does not have self-awareness. Many animals do not have this. This is a very high cognitive ability, but it doesn't matter. They still all experience pain. They still all have moral values because they're conscious. And so it's still important to give them painkillers, even if they have no self-awareness, because consciousness is what matters, not self-awareness in moral significance.
Okay, well, I think that maybe we have some absolute fine line of a distinction here. I really can't even truly make it out. But when it applies to the grander principle of God and how this all ties back to this, in my opinion, the case is that we, again, superimpose human experiences upon the fabric of reality.
Sure.
So let me put it like this to you. Quantum mechanics and physics, would you agree that a priori to the study of physics, a priori to the different trajectories it took, the fundamental premise is accepted by every single person who practices in this field that there is a law that could be understood?
Sort of.
And that seems to be the fundamental rudiment of it, right? Like
No.
the meme is that Newton was sitting under a tree and an apple fell.
Well, no,
And he
no, no.
didn't-
It's like
he
if I
didn't-
said, we're talking right now, both of us are using English. So are we presupposing English? Well, yeah, because that's the language we.
No, we're not presupposing English because English is a linguistic concept. I'm talking about the fabric of reality.
No. I don't
Big
think
difference.
presupposing means something you assume which is true before the argument begins. So since we're using English, we're presupposing English. That doesn't mean that we're presupposing English exists. It just means that we assume English has meaning in the context of the sentence.
Can we talk about what I'm talking about?
Well, no. So I'm trying to draw it back to that. So when scientists try to understand reality, they're doing the same thing. They're presupposing reality exists. They're presupposing that they can understand. They're not presupposing they can understand it. They're trying to understand it, and if they can't, that's fine too. So this idea that people bring in that presuppositions matter is just irrelevant. They don't. They mean nothing. They're
Okay,
irrelevant.
let me put it like this to you. This is the more technical format of it. Do you accept that quantum mechanics, physics, standard model, Newtonian dynamics, whatever, accepts the uniformity of nature?
No, that's false.
I believe that is absolutely true.
Nope. So we've actually proven that one false. So Guth's early universe inflation, one of the things that many people, the fundamental laws of gravity actually changed. It was repulsive at the early universe. So no physicist thinks that uniformity is a thing. No one cares about that in science. If things change, we're happy and we want to know this.
If you don't accept the uniformity of physics, explain to me the gravitational constant.
It's not constant. That was the point. So
listen, I agree with you on the sense that it isn't. But physics, the standard model, the lambda CDM model, the cosmic dark matter model that purports that literally is the canon of physics that you're describing, the Big Bang model and everything, purports a gravitational constant, which at its heart is the uniformity of nature.
No.
Now,
so again, you're confusing.
Wait. Let me put it like this to you.
I understand what you're saying. One sec.
Okay.
You're getting lost in the philosophy. Scientists do not care about the philosophy, the uniformity principles, the presuppositions. Scientists think that's all gibberish, waste of time. We don't care. The only thing, this is absolutely true. You can ask any philosopher what scientists think of their thoughts, and they're like, they don't care at all. Scientists care about novel predictions. Scientists care of, you have an idea, a hypothesis, and you think that hypothesis is true. What you need to do is make a prediction about the future we don't know yet and get it right. And if you can do that, whatever your hypothesis is, that's evidence of your hypothesis. So say you wanted to predict that a law of nature changed. You can do that. Anyone in science can do that. It's perfectly fine. And if you think all laws changed, you can do that too. Say, I think all laws changed. And because all laws changed, I can use this model to predict this new feature of the universe that we're going to discover in 5 years.
And why can you predict it?
Because if it changed in a way that you can model, then you can expect to see differences in the universe than if it had been otherwise.
Why can you expect it to occur this way?
Hypotheses. You can make up whatever hypotheses you want.
You can expect the outcome because there is a law that can be understood.
No.
Not a written one,
No.
not a prescriptive one, but
No.
the fact of the matter that the
No. So this is wrong. So I can
let me finish what I'm saying for a second.
Well, no, I understand. I just want to hop in. Let's say my hypothesis is there is a law that can't be understood. So this is to directly counter your whole point. Let's say I'm going to assume there is a law that cannot be understood, can't understand it at all. And because of this, when we look into this corner of the universe, we're going to see something really weird and only in this spot, not on the other spots or whatever. And if I make this prediction, I get it right, then the scientific community will call that evidence of a law that cannot be understood. So you don't need to presuppose laws can be understood. You can presuppose anything you want. You can have anything you want in a hypothesis. You can have a round square, a logical contradiction in your hypothesis. But if it makes novel testable predictions, that's evidence of your hypothesis. So nobody in science thinks you need uniformity. Nobody in science thinks you need to be able to understand laws. Most quantum physicists say you can't understand quantum mechanics, and anybody who claims they do is lying. So
Mhm.
this idea that science needs to presuppose uniformity, God damn it, or anything else is just wrong. Scientists don't care about any of that. Scientists care of can you predict the
Okay.
future, and if you can, you have evidence.
You're kind of boxing a straw man here because you don't really understand my position. And give me a second to try and explain my position to you. The case is not that it can be understood, perfectly modeled, and all of the intrinsic complexities of it can be displayed to us. It is the fact of nature present before you as it works synchronous with complete synchronicity.
Well, there's a way to answer this.
Everything seems to be working flawlessly. And when you understand the depths of quantum mechanics and you understand the depths of how many independent particles comprise you alone, let alone the space around you or this planet or the sun, and how all of these things work completely flawlessly.
I don't think you understand
every
how
single
science works.
novel testable prediction we can make against this system present before us.
I don't think you're understanding.
It seems to be predictable. It seems to be coherent. There seems to be a method we can't understand.
I don't think you're understanding. Like
Wait,
you're literally missing the point.
You're
missing the point.
Set of properties
You're missing the point.
This about.
Scientists, you can make up whatever hypothesis.
You, bro,
well, you're just rambling on missing the point. So the point here is scientists can make a hypothesis of anything they want. Anything. Round squares, magical leprechauns, gods, laws that can't be understood. You can put any of these you want in a hypothesis. There is nothing in science saying you cannot use these things. You can't presuppose these things. You can't use them. Nothing in science says this. You can put anything you want in a hypothesis of any variety, logical, illogical, contradictory, understandable, not understandable. We do not care. And your argument entails that science would say, no, you can't do this. We're gonna eliminate these and say you can't put these into your hypothesis. There's some bucket of things you can't
getting
put.
This out of what I'm telling you.
Because you're saying we need to presuppose.
Is this what you're deriving out of the words I'm saying?
You're saying we need to presuppose uniformity of nature. We do not. You're saying we need to presuppose the ability to intelligently be able to cognize something about the laws. We do not. You can say my
I'm
hypothesis.
Not saying that at all. I tried to tell you that's not what I'm telling you. I'm telling you really simply.
There is nothing science excludes. Nothing. You can put whatever you want in a hypothesis. Okay. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Anything that's logically possible. Yes, you can.
That means that science presupposes nothing.
No, that's incorrect. It assumes the law of identity. It assumes the fundamental principle of logic.
You can take
mathematics and everything else is constituted. That is assumed.
Can you make a scientific hypothesis that rejects the law of identity?
Impossible.
Okay, so the very first thing I asked, can you put anything you want into a hypothesis?
You can't, because to make a assumption about the law of identity or to try to disprove it would invoke you using it to try to make that assumption. So you can't do that.
So that's also wrong.
The science, mathematics,
Stop. You just said something stupid and wrong. So there are literally models of philosophy that reject all of the laws of identity, non-excluded middle.
Yet invoke them to do so.
They do not. They do not.
Yeah, of course they do.
No, they don't. This is a common misunderstanding of people who don't understand philosophy. They think that because when you read these models, you are using the law of identity in your cognitive understanding to read them, that they therefore invoke the law of identity. This is false. They can have their own.
They not identify certain properties distinct to others.
Again, you're not listening here. So they have their own internal model of their own internal principles that they use to identify things, which is not the law of identity. They use a different law, not the law of identity. That does work.
So they don't say something is itself?
No, they do not. They reject.
So in their model, things aren't themselves.
Correct.
These
are called non-standard logics. This is very well known in philosophy. And I don't think they're true. I think they're very silly. I would agree with you that they're very silly, but science doesn't presuppose them. We don't care. You can put in whatever you want into your model. You can put in non-standard logics. You can put in fuzzy logics. You can put in many-valued logics. You can put in pantheistic logics or diletheistic logics. We don't care. Diletheism is a worldview or a logic that.
Now you're like lecturing me about something that we're not even talking about.
No. This is. I'm trying to educate you to show you why you're wrong. So this is over your head. Stop talking. So if dialetheism is allowed in science, dialetheism is the position of a logic that has true contradictions, P and not P. And if we allow this in science, that means there are no presuppositions of a law of its identity, no presuppositions of uniformity of nature, no presuppositions at all, because we allow this. You can do it. You can put in the craziest non-standard logic you want. And if it makes testable predictions, that's evidence, which proves deductively science doesn't presuppose anything, because you can put anything you want into a hypothesis. And if it makes predictions, that's evidence, including rejecting the law of identity. So you're wrong when you say science presupposes the law of identity. It does not. You could take that out, make a prediction with it. That's fine.
I love it. Science can use a pen to write a piece of paper that says pens don't exist. I love it.
Yes, that is. You can form a hypothesis like that if you want. We don't care. That's fine. Like science doesn't say you can't do that.
Identity. Let's invoke the law of identity to be able to distinguish things from themselves and as something as itself. So then we can understand relationships between them, which is the formality of science, understanding the relationship between the properties of nature.
Science says you can make stupid hypotheses like that.
Yet we somehow don't invoke the law of identity to do so. We can make a paper that makes the conclusion the law of identity doesn't exist. Yet fundamentally, to even write the first letter of the paper, we would invoke the law of identity.
No.
It's
so
just,
you've made four mistakes there that you're just ignorant of philosophy. So wait, hold up. You've made four fundamental mistakes there if you're just not understanding philosophy. The first is the non-standard logics do not invoke the law of identity. This is a common misconception of people who are just ignorant to philosophy. Non-standard logics have their own.
Can we stop right there for a second? Because I want to question you about this.
Sure.
I know the standard laws of logic.
Yeah.
Can you tell me the non-standard laws of logic? The primary law of logic, as conventionally known, is the law of identity. It is objective. It is non-derivative. It is assertive in every way, and again, trying to disprove it is contradictory. I don't know what that means. So I would simply ask you this. In non-standard logics, what is the first law?
I don't know, because I'm not familiar with them, but you can ask them yourself.
Well, why are you arguing in such confidence on behalf of this system?
Because you
don't even know the first law of this system, and you're arguing on its behalf.
No.
Is that not ignorant or what?
No, because I know they exist. So this is pretty well understood philosophy. You can Google any of these terms.
Let's do the research and let's find out what the first law is.
Okay, go away. I'm done with you. You can do the research yourself. Google many-valued logics. Google fuzzy logics. Google dialetheistic logics. These exist. They reject the standard laws. The standard laws, law of identity, law of excluded middle, law of non-contradiction. These are axioms within models of standard logic. There's a label for these. It's called standard logic. And there are non-standard logics. And you can Google what these are, and you can then say, oh, look, you can find out what the laws are. I think they're gibberish. I don't want to do the time to research them. I think they're dumb. But science doesn't presuppose you can't have them. They're perfectly fine in a scientific hypothesis. If you make predictions with whatever silliness you want, totally okay. We're fine with that. So you're wrong when you say science makes presuppositions. It doesn't. It's just whatever works. That's the scientific method. Anybody else got any questions, comments, God stuff? Snowy Banana, what did you got?
Hey. Wait, are you like specifically only wanting God stuff, or?
No, I just starting point. You can pick whatever you want. I don't care.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm gonna go back onto the whole ideal universe thing. Best of possible worlds.
Sure.
And you're a materialist. You think conscious states arise from material things,
physical states,
at least as it is now. In the best of all possible worlds, you'd be able to make. You could form matter at will into a conscious being, but then it blips out into its own universe, and you have no control over it after that.
Well, so in the best possible world, you don't need materialism to form consciousness. You can form consciousness in non-material ways. But yes, so you can form consciousness in whatever way it's formed, and then it will become its own entity and be given all the rights of a conscious entity.
Right. Okay. So you could just create a conscious being, but once you do that, it then blips out into its own personal universe.
Yep.
Okay. And then you think that it is hypothetically possible for a conscious being with adult level intelligence to, say, be suicidal, I assume?
It's logically possible.
Yeah, okay. Logically possible for, and then, we were talking about can you consent yourself into a situation in which you consented in the past, but you don't consent in the present? and
That's up to you.
you know,
That's up
yeah,
to
yeah,
you.
I know, exactly, yeah. But it seemed like you ultimately agreed that it was possible.
Well, if it's up
So
to you, that's literally means it's possible.
yeah. So if it's possible for somebody to do that, like hypothetically possible, I mean, like what's preventing some
If it's possible,
being
nothing's
in the
preventing it. What are you talking about?
huh?
If it's possible, nothing's preventing it. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, just give me just like 1 second. All right. So what's preventing a because you also said that you can't create a sentient being with like a certain like a preset
Right.
code of like what you want.
Yeah.
But if it's
So
possible for such a being
what would
for
be
such a being to
preventing it would be the desires of the individual who does not want to do that. Would be what's preventing it. So if their desires change to where they want to commit suicide or become permanent slaves to some kind of torture demon, what's preventing that is their current desires, presumably.
well, right, yeah, but there's nothing preventing them from them having that desire in the first place. Like they can't have that desire.
Maybe logic, reason, not being a moron. Those would be good. Maybe, I don't know.
Right, but okay, so would it be possible for them to have the adult level intelligence, because that's the phrase that you used, adult level intelligence, and
Well,
still have those
something would
desires?
have to cause them to have those desires. I don't know what possibly would. Is it possible? Yes. Do I know what would? No. I can think of nothing that would cause them to have those desires unless they did
What do
it
you mean
themselves.
cause?
Well, like, how would those desires arise in an individual?
Well, I mean, how would I mean, what would I mean? Well, I mean that's
Because we start them off with some
when you
base level desires, some base level intelligence of what we define as like the whatever the rational individual minimum requirement is, and then they'd have to go from that to suicidal. I don't think it's I don't think there's anything in the rational basic human that would make them want to be suicidal or make them want to be slaves. And so I don't know of what could cause them to go from rational state to crazy person state. Is it possible? Yes. Is it possible for people to get to that state? Sure. Maybe they just want to experiment like a scientist. I want to experience the crazy state, and they just do it. Sure. And is that possible? Yes.
well, okay, so well, I mean, that's actually one of the questions that I was going to say. Like, if you think that it's whatever the baseline state, if it's impossible for the universe to create a baseline state that can at some point end up being suicidal, doesn't that seem that suicidality would be inherently prevented from being a fact, like a thing that any conscious being could have?
There's definitely going to be lots of cases like that, most likely, where people just simply don't choose to do it. Like there's necessarily going to be many cases of things that simply do not happen in the universe, even though they're logically possible. Like by definition, there's infinitely many such states. So there's going to be states in the best of possible worlds that do not happen, even though they could happen.
Oh, okay. It's simply because it would be immoral for that.
No,
Well,
it's
for
just
why? Why?
logically possible. So let's say at time t, I want to eat a bowl of chocolate ice cream. Like I could have eaten a bowl of cockroaches, but I didn't. It's logically possible for me to eat a bowl of cockroaches, but I didn't. And so for any given instance or any given choice, there's infinitely many things you could do. You only do one of them, which means necessarily there's infinitely many worlds that did not come about, even though they
Well,
could
right,
have.
but so sure, but it's like there's an idea of like, is there anything that which in the best possible world, uh, that there's anything that is completely prevented at all times?
Involuntary
And
position of will.
well, yeah, okay, is that the only thing
Yeah,
though?
it's the only thing.
Okay, so suicidality could come
Yeah,
about.
nothing immoral about
Um,
suicide. Suicide is perfectly fine, but it's
there's
like
nothing innate in the there's nothing like innate in.
well, so it's like asking, would I eat a bowl of cockroaches? Like, could I do it? Yes, I could eat a bowl of cockroaches, but it's probably
I'm
never
sure there
going
are
to
people that
happen.
do.
Well, so it's would I? So specifically the question, would I do it? So it's probably the case that in nowhere in my infinite existence of the best of possible world will I ever eat a bowl of cockroaches. I could. It's possible. It's logically possible I could do it, but it probably won't happen. There's nothing to inspire me to want to eat a bowl of cockroaches. And so even though it's possible to happen, that doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Okay. Well, I mean, like, well, I don't know. I feel like if you have an infinite number of attempts at something, I guess, and then it fails an infinite number of times, I would say that's probably something that would probably be like how do you classify that? How do you say that it's not? How do you say that it's still possible at that point?
I have no idea what you're asking right now. So like,
Okay, well, so
I would agree with the
like,
first part. I agree with the infinite number of attempts part. The infinite fails part, that doesn't make any sense. I don't see any. There's no failure essentially in the best of all possible. There's no like.
Well, okay, so like let's say that no, I mean like create it's that you could have an infinite number of attempts at creating a consciousness that is bent to your will, but you'll fail an infinite number of times because in your best of all possible worlds, it's ingrained in the universe that's not going to happen.
Sure.
Okay, so then in the best of all possible universes, whenever you attempt to create a conscious state and then it gets blipped out somewhere else and gets elevated to whatever the minimum standard is, will that minimum standard ever include a consciousness that at some point ends up being suicidal?
I don't see how. I do not see how that would be the case. Like it would be like, is it you take any random action, say, is it ever the case that there will be a consciousness that believes a non-standard logic? Maybe. I don't see how that could occur, but I don't understand or pretend to understand what these laws of the universe would be at that level. I'm not a super brain, but I think probably not. Just like I don't think there's any consciousness that's going to be created that's going to make themselves into a permanent pretzel for no reason. Like, could it happen? Yes, they have the power to do it. Will there ever be a rational consciousness that does that, makes himself into a permanent pretzel? Probably not. Is there going to be a consciousness that makes himself into a permanent potato? Probably not. Is it possible? Yes. Will they do it? Probably not. I don't think so. I don't think there's anything that's going to inspire a conscious agent in the best of all possible world to turn themselves into a permanent potato.
Right. Okay. So then I would say that you would then have to say that if you were to have an infinite number of consciousness and they infinitely don't do that, then it would be impossible for a.
Well, no. So like you're confusing possibility and in like whether it happens and whether it's possible to happen. Like this is a common misconception about infinities that if there's infinite possibilities, all outcomes must happen. That's false. For example, you can have an infinite series of events. Let's say like a typewriter, you just type P infinitely. You could possibly type any letters, but of all the possibilities, there is one possible world where it's just P's and nothing but P's. There's no changes, only P. And so this idea that because there is an infinite, all outcomes must occur is simply false. You can have an infinite set of just P, nothing but P with no changes. And so there can be limits on what does occur, even though the possibility doesn't have those limits.
Do you believe in predetermination? I don't know if I ever asked you that before.
You like Christian predetermination or determinism?
Well, no. I mean, okay, let's see. What's the other
determinism?
term for it? Determinism. There you go.
No. In physics, indeterminism is the consensus.
Okay. Well, I mean, all right. Well, because okay, is indeterminism like necessary, or could you have a universe where
Sure.
Okay, so you could have a universe where determinism is absolutely a thing. So in a universe where determinism is absolutely a thing, so you have a keyboard and it has 27 different keys, and you have the hand infinitely punching in the P key, like you were describing. Well, if it's deterministic, then from start to finish, or start to infinity, it's always going to press P, and there's nothing that's going to ever make it not press P. You would say that it's impossible for it to press anything other than P, would you not?
If you're a necessitarian,
if it's deterministic.
If you're a necessitarian, that's the case. Determinism doesn't mean it's logically necessary. It just means it happens to be the case that this is what's going to happen. So there's a difference between determinism and necessitarianism. Necessitarianism is the position that, yes, if all that happens is P, that's the only thing that ever could have happened. Determinism is just the fact that, let's say, based off of the initial conditions of the universe, it only does P. But that doesn't mean that's the only thing that necessarily could have happened. So I'm not a necessitarian. If I was, then yes, literally P is the only logical possibility. But I don't have a position on necessitarianism.
Well, I mean, like if okay, if you're a determinist and you think, okay, well, given the beginning point of the universe, like the beginning point, you could say the beginning point of the universe could have been different.
Yeah.
And then if that was different, then everything that follows was different. But
Sure.
Given that starting point, everything else after that is exactly how it was going to happen.
Sure.
Well, then, if the starting point, if the starting point for a minimum baseline consciousness is something that's not suicidal and will never ever make itself suicidal, well, then it would be the case that
it wouldn't be impossible. So again, impossible would be necessitarianism. So if under necessitarianism in your argument, if necessitarianism were true, then it would be impossible for suicidal people to occur.
no, even in a deterministic state, because in the best of all possible, because in the best of all possible worlds, the universe is set up, with maximum morality or whatever the hell.
Yeah.
It's set up in such a way that the minimum baseline consciousness cannot be something, or will never be something that can be suicidal, or that will be suicidal.
Well, no. So again, you're confusing things that won't happen versus things that can't happen. So if you're a necessitarian, then you're right that they can never happen. They're logically impossible. If you're a determinist in the way that I'm describing it, that simply means that there is a set of all possibilities, not all possibilities will be chosen. That doesn't mean that they are impossible. Impossible is, again,
it won't happen in that universe, though.
No.
The
So
suicidal
means
consciousness won't ever happen in the best of all possible world.
No. If someone wanted it, would it happen? No, then it would be impossible. If someone wanted it, would it happen? Yes, it's possible. But no one wants it. Does that mean it's impossible? No. So again, logical possibility, what can possibly happen, is different from what does happen. In necessitarianism, they are the same. Determinism does not say they are the same. So it's just two different philosophical positions. But for the sake of the argument you're trying to make, let's go with necessitarianism. Let's say necessitarianism is true in that world based on that definition, then you would be correct that whatever doesn't happen would be impossible to happen.
Well, okay. So what I'm saying, I'm not saying that like suicidality is itself impossible, but
the particular example is irrelevant. Yeah. So whatever the example is.
Well, I mean, I'm just sticking with this particular example just to have a particular example to use. It makes it easier, I think. But I'm not saying that that suicide in the best of all possible worlds would be impossible, but the existence of a consciousness that desires suicide seems to be what's impossible.
Well, again,
based off of what you've been saying.
No. So again, I'm saying I don't know what would cause a rational consciousness to do that. Whether or not it will happen, I don't know. I can't imagine anything that would cause it to happen. So is it possible? Yes. It may never happen, though.
You don't know what it would cause a rational. Do you know what is it? Antinatalists?
Yes, they are very silly.
You don't think do you consider them to be rational?
Rational. I mean, rationality is just the ability to infer a conclusion from premises, more or less. So there can be rational, I guess. I just don't think their argument is sound.
So, I mean, well, if they're rational, like, then they're totally fine with just the elimination of all life. I mean, then how could? Well, then don't you have a example right there of how a rational being
because
could arrive at the conclusion of suicide?
No, antinatalists aren't suicidal. Antinatalists say they don't want to have kids because this world is really miserable and suffering is the majority experience, and because suffering is the majority experience, it's immoral to have kids to force them to go through that experience. In the best of all possible worlds, they're not going to be antinatalists anymore.
There's a few. There's some branches of that. I don't know if they have like a specific name in and of themselves, but there's a few branches where like they're given the whole like if you were presented with a big red button, and by pressing that big red button you would eliminate all life in the universe instantly and painlessly, would you press it? And
well,
again,
that's yes, because of the future suffering they would be preventing. That's their rationale. They're rationally concluded that in order to prevent more suffering, they can kill everyone painlessly, which they wouldn't cause suffering in their argument, which is a rational conclusion based off of their assumptions. I think that they're wrong. I think that ending your life is a form of suffering if you don't consent to it. And so I think that they're unsound in their argument. But the conclusion does follow from the premises that if you're trying to minimize suffering, if you end someone's life painlessly, they will experience less suffering. But again, in the best of all possible worlds, they would not do that, because that wouldn't in suffering, people can literally just turn off their own suffering if they want, and so that would be immoral, and they would recognize that's immoral.
Can they turn off? Well, so some people say that just the simple fact of having desires, of like wanting something that you don't currently have at all, or anything like that, would itself like having any sort of desire, period, would be a form of suffering.
No,
I mean,
that doesn't make any sense.
I mean, that's really, you don't think
Yeah.
so?
Yeah.
I mean, that's I mean, do Buddhists not think that? I mean,
I have
seems
no
like
idea
that's
who thinks that,
something
but if anybody thinks that, they're wrong. Like having a desire is a different, literally, physically, a different process in the brain to emotional processing of suffering. Literally, different parts of the brain. And there's
well, sure, but you also think that you could have a consciousness without a brain. So
sure,
it's like,
sure. So, but
how would you? So then, what would you?
Again, all roses are flowers, but not all flowers are roses. And so, if I can give a single logical example where having a desire does not entail pain, then that logically proves that it does not entail pain to have
No,
desires.
no, I'm not talking about pain. I'm talking about suffering. Is two
I'm using
things.
those synonymously. So, if I can give a single logical example with desires but no suffering, then that proves that it is not entailed to have suffering if you have desires. So I only need one example. And I can give one example of one that we have right here today, which is brains. You can literally shut off people's ability to feel pain or suffering just by damaging a certain part of the brain, but they can still have desires. Like there's literally no problem there.
I mean, would the lack of fulfillment of those desires not cause like some sort of
Not if I destroy the part of the brain that would then like release those chemicals. No, literally it can't cause them pain anymore.
well, it's not like, oh, okay, you keep using pain and suffering
Synonymously,
interchangeably.
yeah. So I'm using them synonymously.
Mm.
Emotional and physical pain are both forms of pain, and suffering is either one of those things.
What do you think a desire is then? Like,
To want something?
what is it? Yeah, like why would you want anything? Why want anything?
You could just be there's pre-programmed too. Like, I want ice cream. Am I suffering to not have ice cream? No, I'm not. I'm not suffering to not have ice cream. So I can want something and not be. I can desire ice cream, and not be suffering because I don't have it.
Mm. Sorry, some fucking guy in the audience keeps messaging me. Just gonna block him real quick. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, my whole point was the point that I was gonna try to get at was if you could create a consciousness, even if it's gonna get created into some sort of baseline consciousness, you could just have if you could just create an infinite number of those, unless each consciousness is that. Unless each time it gets brought to baseline, it's the exact same consciousness.
Well, no.
I mean, would you
within
not
a spectrum?
eventually
Within a spectrum. So if it's
within a spectrum?
like there could be the spectrum could be infinitely large, but even if it's infinitely large, that doesn't mean it encapsulates all possible things. So there could be an infinitely large spectrum of possible individuals, and none of which choose to turn themselves into a magical potato for eternity. So that doesn't mean they're the same. There's still an infinite spectrum of possibilities. They could each be different individuals, and none of them choose to do this particular thing. And there's going to be a very large spectrum of those things that they never choose to do. And there's still an infinite spectrum of individuals there.
Well, if it's impossible to create for an individual that wants those things to come into existence, because the universe simply does not allow it, then it's not possible for.
Again, you're confusing determinism and necessitarianism. I already went over that. You can just Google necessitarianism and non-necessitarianism.
I got it. But I'm saying it's like even from determinism, the baseline, the starting point.
I already went over this.
That
you can Google necessitarianism. You can do the research on your own. That one already addressed that.
Okay. I feel like you just like a certain type of it, but not the.
Yeah, if you want to Google necessitarianism, you can look at all the different versions and philosophy of necessitarianism. I have no interest in debating that. You can go Google necessitarianism.
Okie dokie. All right. Have a good one.
Yep. Johan, what's up? Can you guys hear him? I can't hear him. Do I have to refresh again? Scotty, can you send me a message if you hear the people in the chat that I can't hear, so I know I have to refresh my page? All right, somebody send me a message they can hear you. I'll refresh. All right, Johan, you just come up and I will refresh my side so that I can hear you. All right. Oh, that's the wrong one.
We meet again.
Hey, Finto, how's it going?
Hey, I only have like 5 minutes, honestly.
Go for
it. Okay, so I did some actual research on the issue that you brought up to say that quantum particles are a better explanation than the God world. From what you're saying, you don't technically believe in it. You don't believe we actually came from quantum particles, but you said it has more explanatory power.
Well, explanatory power, anything can have infinite explanatory power. Just means it explains all the data. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, you just said it's a better explanation.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there's an issue because you said it was outside of space-time, but quantum particles are not outside of space-time, and we can't really observe anything outside of space-time, correct?
So Google emergent space-time, it's the consensus that quantum fields, I said fields, are outside of space-time.
It's not a consensus.
It is actually.
It's not. There's no consensus that quantum particles are outside of space-time.
Fields, quantum fields. Yes, it is. Google emergent space-time.
Okay, are you talking about quantum fluctuations?
No. Google emergent space-time.
Okay, well, to infer any particle, though, what you're inferring is matter, which requires space and time.
No.
Yes, that's the issue with the argument. If you said quantum fluctuations, that's another theory that I found.
One sec. So, first thing, there are other fields. Space-time is a particular field. There are other fields, and there can be particles in those other fields that are not in space-time. So space-time is a particular field.
When you say a particle, though, you're inferring matter.
Stop. There are multiple kinds of fields in physics. Space-time is one kind of field. Particles in space-time are in space-time. Particles in the other fields are not in space-time. So it is wrong to think that any particle entails space-time. That's wrong.
Okay, how about this?
In the space-time field does. Only a particle in the space-time field does.
So what tools do we use to observe things outside of space-time?
We use novel predictions. So like we say, if space-time is emergent from quantum fields.
Philosophical thoughts is what you're saying.
No, novel prediction is empirical. So what we do is we say, I'm muted. Can you guys hear me in the chat?
No, you're not muted.
No, I'm talking about on my stream. But so if the view of space-time being emergent comes from lots of different things in physics of using models of quantum mechanics and omitting the equations of space-time, like the lambda.
It's quantum fluctuations, what you're referring to.
No. So space-time.
Yes, it's talking about fluctuations.
No, again, you're not understanding. In physics, space-time is represented by equations like the lambda in the, I forget what it's called, general and special relativity equations. Can you solve those equations with removing lambda? The answer is yes, which means there is some potential way to have a, causal link between things without space-time. That was the initial starting point for thinking space and time are emergent. From that, they made models. Those models then made predictions about quantum mechanical processes, which then confirmed, because all of them confirm all of the predictions, which then makes it a legitimate model in order in physics. And it became the consensus because of its explanatory something. I don't understand it because it's quantum mechanics. But you can then Google emergent space-time to actually look at these models and show that, yes, these models do work. They don't have space-time. Space-time is an emergent from something more fundamental, and there's literally no contradiction.
Yeah, but it's theorized. It's
everything in quantum mechanics.
Well, it's not even theorized. I would say it's
God is theorized, but has no evidence. These are theorized, but have evidence.
Okay. So you're saying that space-time emerged from matter?
No. Maybe. It
Okay,
depends
well,
how
you said
define matter.
you keep saying
If you-
quantum particles.
If you define a
Quantum
no, no, no,
particles
quantum
is
field,
supposing
quantum
matter.
field, quantum field.
Okay, quantum
But
field.
if
Yeah,
you
you're talking about fluctuation. That's what dude, I gave you the answer already. I've looked into it. You're talking about quantum fluctuation.
No. Fluctuations are things that happen to fields. Fluctuations are not fields. Fluctuations, like particles, are a kind of fluctuation in a field. So field and fluctuations in fields are two different things. But it's irrelevant to the point. The point here is that quantum fields are outside of space-time. Yes, I agree. And they can form particles, and those particles are outside of space-time. Yes.
Yeah, is there an empirical data to show that?
There's evidence of it in the models, which is again more than God. So
we can observe things outside of space-time.
Yes.
We can? What tools do we use to do that?
The things in space-time.
Okay. So how are we observing outside of space-time?
Prediction. So I can say, like, say I have a magical.
That's not. No. That's not an answer.
Yes, it is. Let me walk.
You're saying I'm making a wild guess.
No.
Now.
Stop. Let's go over the scientific method, because I think most theists don't understand this. If I say there is a being outside of space-time named Bob, and I say, if Bob exists, he will give me a gold brick, and I say, Bob, please give me a gold brick, and a gold brick appears in front of me, that is evidence of a being outside of space-time, even though the observation was in space-time, because it was a prediction of a model which entails a being outside of space-time. And this model is the only one that predicted it so far. That is evidence of a thing outside of space-time. So even though I'm looking in space-time, the observations in space-time can be evidence of things outside of space-time.
Okay. So why exactly then do you say that, well, you have to make a prediction? Like, what prediction are we making to say that quantum particles are outside of space-time?
Casimir effect.
Casimir effect.
Yep.
Okay, well, how so? I mean, it's like with the Casimir effect,
in a vacuum where there's literally no particles, if there are things that can pop into space-time from this non-space-time material, it will cause these two pieces of metal to collide. They are pushed together even in a vacuum. Therefore, this non-spatiotemporal area exists and does stuff just like.
So you're saying that energy is being constantly added to the universe.
Yep.
And taken out.
Yep.
So you're denying the first law of thermodynamics?
Nope.
I mean, that is a denial of it.
No. Again, the first law of thermodynamics is energy
cannot be
created or destroyed. Right.
Yeah.
Energy being introduced into our system from an external system is not energy being created or destroyed.
Well, okay. To suppose an external system, that's still in some sort of space that you're supposing, right?
No. So again, space-time is one kind of a field. There are other kinds of fields.
Okay. Well, let's say outside of our field then. Outside of space-time, that field. You're still supposing another area of space now that it's coming into.
Stop. Another field. There's a different field. It's not space. Space is one kind of a field. There are other fields, yes. Space-time is one field. It's just a kind of a field.
Yeah, a non-physical field. Is that what you're supposing?
No,
okay, well, what is this other field?
All fields are physical, as far as I know.
Okay, so it's coming from another physical field.
Yeah.
So its own space, not our space, its own space.
It's not space. It's a different field. They're not.
Okay, well, you're just now. This is
field is not.
Okay, now this is just semantics. You said they're physical locations, and it's its own location.
Fields aren't locations. Locations are things in fields. So again, you don't understand.
Okay, should I just say its own area, its own field? Like that's what it all means.
It's called a field. So yes, there are other fields that are outside of space-time.
Its own physical location.
No, field. A location is a
thing. Yeah, you said field, but you said it's a physical location. Everything is physical.
No. Again, you don't understand any of the terms in physics. So it is a field. The locations are things in fields. A field is not a location. So a field is a thing. Yes, I think it's physical. Yes. And it exists outside of space-time. Yes, because space-time is one kind of a field. But let's go back to the original point here. You said this is a problem to show that it's not as good as the God hypothesis. How? Because everything I just said has evidence, whereas none of the God hypothesis.
Yeah, so there's an issue.
Yeah.
There's an issue now, because now that you've introduced something, I mean, this is basically multiverse theory, except repackaged to invoke quantum theory into it.
What?
So
multiverse theory
what you're saying
better than a God. So I'm not seeing how this relates to you thinking this is.
Well, you can say that, yes, but logically speaking, it's not coherent. So
it's perfectly
if you were to introduce,
why do you think
it's not?
Why do you?
Yeah, because do you remember the original challenge I gave for like a third option? like the third option challenge.
Today, like
Yeah.
today was,
So
you
I said
the argument was that
Yeah, it's-
these physical theories are not as good as the God hypothesis. Why?
yeah. Well, I proposed two factors, and they really do. I mean, like the foundation of the
Well, let's focus
of
on just what you.
the non-God worldviews.
I don't remember
I s-
anything you've said before. Let's
Yeah,
just focus on.
I'm
focus
yeah,
on what you said
I'm
today.
bringing it up.
Wait. So today you said the physics theories are not as good as the God hypothesis, and why?
Yeah, and you're you're kind of breaking my rule, like that I imposed, like because these things are illogical, and we can go into why they're illogical.
Well, I think God is illogical, and there's lots of evidence God is illogical, but I don't really care about the logicality of it. I think that's irrelevant. All I care about is which model makes predictions about things we don't know yet and gets it right. And even if an illogical model can do that, it's going to be better than one that is logical but can't do that, right?
Okay, so I mean,
Wait,
well, I mean, geez,
would you agree?
what
or
I was
disagree with that?
proposing before, though.
Wait. I asked you a question. Is a model that is illogical but can predict the future accurately, consistently, better than a logical model that cannot predict the future consistently?
Yeah, from my worldview, yes, I would say logical models can predict the future
No.
better.
The question was, is an illogical model that can predict the future better than a logical model that cannot predict the future?
Oh, a logical model that cannot predict the future.
Yes.
That doesn't really follow, because if you were to say it's an illogical model, well, what you're then doing to say is this thing can predict the future only if you deny logic.
No. So let's suppose you think it's illogical. You don't understand it. You don't understand this model, but it predicts the future very consistently. Now, possibly that means it's logical and you don't understand it, but let's just grant it's illogical.
Yeah.
Either way, this model accurately predicts the future, and you have a model that you think is logical, but it doesn't. Which one's better?
Yeah, but the issue is now you're kind of setting up a straw man. Well, you're setting up something that really shouldn't be.
You're breaking up. You're breaking up.
Yeah, I'm saying illogical things cannot predict the future. So you're kind of setting up.
So that's great. That's great. If illogical things can't predict the future, then that proves the multiverse, quantum models, they're all logical because they do predict the future, like the Casimir effect. You're breaking up again. I'm hearing like every other letter. I can't hear you. Understand you. Still breaking up. Still breaking up, Tiptoe. You need to reconnect.
Is it better?
Wait. Try now.
I don't know if it's me.
Nope. It's still breaking up. You got to reconnect. Try like leaving and coming back. Yeah. AP, what's up? While waiting for Fipto. Oh, Fipto's back. All right. All right, try speaking, Fipto. It's probably my own. Let me refresh.
I don't know. I mean,
all right.
Does anybody not hear me?
All right, now I can hear you. Yeah, there's something on my Discord that every time somebody like leaves and reconnects, I have to reconnect to be able to hear them. I don't know what's going on with Discord in that way, but go ahead and talk.
Yeah. Okay. So I said what you would have to appeal through naturalism, empiricism,
I don't care about that. I don't care about that. So
and materialism.
The only thing I care about is in physics. Physics makes predictions like the Casimir effect. It gets those right. So whatever model uses those, by your definition, can't be illogical.
But okay, so you're saying from the Casimir effect, what that's appealing to is another. Well, I won't say space.
It can appeal to
field.
Anything. It doesn't make a difference what it appeals.
It's appealing to something outside of itself, so we're derived from something else.
That's fine.
Now it then begs the question: what is the origin of that field?
Well, I don't care. So, like, if I say there is a magical,
it does matter.
No, it doesn't. So, if I say there's a magical being,
it does.
No, it doesn't. If I say there's a magical being named Bob who is uncreated, ultimate creator of the earth. Let's say he's not the creator of the earth. Let's say he's just this ultimate guy who's existed forever and never created anything, but he's just there, just Bob, the infinite uncreated being named Bob. He didn't create the universe, but he's just there. And Bob is going to give me a gold brick if I pray to Bob. I pray to Bob, gold brick appears. Now, I have used a model, a hypothesis that there is this infinite uncreated being named Bob to predict a gold brick, and it happened, that's evidence of an infinite uncreated being named Bob. So I can put whatever I
Okay.
want into a hypothesis, anything you want, you put into a hypothesis, and if it predicts the future, whether it's logical or illogical, I do not care. You said it by definition can't be illogical, which is wrong. It's false. It can be and still make predictions. But if it was, that means this model has now successfully made predictions about the future, which by definition makes it better than any model, logical or illogical, that does not predict the future. And so in physics, the models in physics do predict the future. They do make testable predictions. That's how we got to the modern physics level. God has never done this, ever. And so of all of the models of physics that have successfully made predictions about the future, they are all better than God, whether they are
Yeah,
logical or
because
illogical.
I mean, because you'd be breaking one of the commands, which is you shall not test the Lord thy God.
I
So
don't
if
care.
you wanted to run a test on God,
I don't care.
Unfortunately, the God of this universe says you can't do that
Well, he's an
already
idiot.
as it
I
is.
don't care. So any
Well,
model that
okay.
can
Well,
make-
you're just saying that. Can you say that with empirical evidence to say that the
I
God of
don't
this
care.
universe would be an idiot? Okay. Well, sure. You don't care. Okay. Well,
So,
now
like,
let's talk about the
you're
worldview.
evading, you're evading,
Let's just talk about the worldview then.
Your original question.
I'm not evading.
Your original statement was
Yes, we're talking about the worldview.
Stop. Your original statement was that the physics models are not as good as the God hypothesis. Now, my argument is the physics models are better than the God hypothesis because they make predictions. So I think any model that successfully makes predictions is better than any model that does not successfully make predictions. So if you're willing to grant that God does not successfully make predictions because of what God said you can't test him or whatever, I'm fine with that. That means by my epistemology and probably
Wait,
most
are you
rational,
saying-
but most people's rational epistemology is going to say your God hypothesis is garbage, just like magical farting unicorns who make no predictions.
Yeah.
But my hypothesis that makes predictions like physics are much better because they do.
So why from your ideology, where I mean technically predictions, like for you to have that as a foundational belief system as it is anyways, is well, now what you're saying is okay, well, objectively speaking, predictions are the best marker to go by, and this is how we can discover what truth is.
Sure.
Is that the route you want to go down?
Sure, yes.
Okay, so you're saying you can find truth in predictions.
Sure.
Okay, so if I say I'm God, and what is it? And these are the numbers to win the lottery. Somebody wins the lottery.
That would be
then
evidence.
do you have to conclude that I am God?
Well, it'd be evidence. You'd have to do that sufficiently number of times to be higher than chance.
Wait, hold on. Why are you putting a new parameter on?
Well, that's not a new parameter. It's like you can guess anything. Like there's novel testable predictions. That sentence has many parameters already in it. Like novel means it's new. You can't predict something we already know that's going to happen. Like if I predict the sun's going to rise tomorrow, that's not a novel prediction. Testable means it has to be something that we know.
So how many lottery wins do I need?
I don't know. You probably calculate that. Let's say 50. I don't know.
50 lottery wins, and that's what. Okay,
sure. But every lottery.
Yeah, I mean, like okay, so
like every single lottery win is evidence.
Okay. What about just like I don't know, 5 lottery wins, like big money lottery wins?
Sure, go for it.
Well, there is a man who has actually won the lottery 6 times.
Great, and if he has claimed that he has God and used God to do it,
he's bankrupt.
Sure.
Yeah, he's bankrupt now. But yeah, he's won the lottery 6 times.
That's great. So if he used God,
so if he ever claimed to be God, would you say that he is God and bow down?
No, novel predictions, you have to make the prediction before the event happens. So if you say, I am God, and therefore I can predict the lottery 5 more times, and then you do it, that would be evidence. I don't know if that would be sufficient evidence, but for the sake of your argument, let's go with it is and say, yeah, sure.
Yeah, the guys run the same numbers over and over and over again. Won the lottery on the same numbers.
Does not matter.
If he keeps running the same numbers and knows that this number is going to be the secret sauce for him to win the lottery, then from your worldview, if he claimed to be God,
that would be
you would have to kind of just submit to it.
Sure, if that would be evidence. Sure.
Okay. Well, dang, man.
Sufficient evidence. That's the number you've picked up, but
okay. So now it's not sufficient evidence.
Well, it never was. I said 5. I think what 50, 500. So you said 5. So.
Well, I asked you. You said yes, sure.
Yeah, just to grant the sake of the argument. That's what the sure means. So clearly, I would not accept this, but we're going to go with it for the sake of the argument.
Well, you said sure. Oh, you said sure. Okay, so you don't actually believe in it. So
no, I said like 50. You said 5.
You okay? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because you said like I don't know. I'm just going to choose a high number. Which do you do this with everything? You say 50 times and then I'll believe it.
No. Normally, like lottery numbers aren't really that significant to me. So if it could predict, say, like Revelations. Let's say the things in Revelations actually happen. Jesus comes back, half the Christians disappear, whatever. That would be evidence of the Christian God. Absolutely.
Yeah, but it would have been a one-time thing, not like multiple.
That's still a novel prediction. So like if you predict that Jesus is going to come back in the future and half the Christians are going to magically disappear and it happens, that would be evidence of the conclusion because it's predicted before it happens. It's a novel testable prediction.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, if you're going to follow through with the Left Behind series, I don't even think that's biblically accurate. What happens?
It's just an example. It doesn't need to be accurate. It's just an example.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if the Bible said, which I don't think it does, yeah. The Left Behind series, I don't think it's like biblically sound as it is.
Doesn't matter. It's just a prediction.
Okay.
It's just a given.
Yeah. So prophetic words given in the Bible
this way,
are good enough for you then.
Yeah, like if it's a novel testable prediction made in the Bible and it gets it right, that's evidence. The prophecies in the Bible don't. They're too vague and ambiguous. They're nothing. But
okay.
One example would be the Bhagavad Gita, which predicts the age of the earth is 4.3 billion years. Extremely specific, extremely precise. That would be evidence of Hinduism. Yes, you can legitimately use that as evidence of Hinduism.
Well, wait, which one? The
Bhagavad Gita.
What?
Bhagavad Gita predicts the age of the earth is 4.3 billion years old, which is very, very close.
It actually doesn't. Yeah, no. Somebody gave me the real numbers on this, and I've run the calculations. It's actually 1.9 billion.
You're wrong. So it predicts that
I'm not wrong. No. If you look at how they measure divine years and such,
the academic consensus
it's inaccurate.
Of professors who actually understand this, who are better
in the East. In the East, they have a different worldview.
Both the East and
the
West.
This is Eastern thought.
Stop. All of the experts in both the East and the West who have done this calculation came up with this number way before we knew anything about the age of the earth. This is the consensus view among pretty much the vast majority of everybody in this field. If you want to disagree, that's fine. I don't care.
Okay,
they
break down to me. What numbers are they using? Because the book uses like oddish numbers.
No, they don't.
But
they give exact
from
years.
Okay. Yeah, well, yes, I'm saying it uses oddish numbers, like oddish ways of coming about it. It measures through other, like it's purely, it's logical how it's logically cohesive how they come to the numbers. But I'm saying the calculations in it.
4.3 billion years. Cycles of creation and destruction. Many Hindu texts mention the cycle of creation and destruction. According to the Upanishads, the universe and earth, along with humans and other creatures, undergo repeated cycles, blah, 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 blah. In Hindu cosmology, the age of the earth is 4.3 billion years.
Yeah.
1 day of Brahma, that is 1,000 times the sum of 4 yugas in a year, the creator of the Kalpa. And this is destroyed by fire and water elements. At this point, Brahma rests for 1 night, just as long as the day. The process called pralyala cataclysm repeats for 1,100 Brahman years. These numbers are the numbers of the academic sources. This one is from Klaus Kleistenmeier, something from Rutledge. So if you want to disagree with these numbers, I don't care. This is the academic consensus. If you think it's wrong, then you don't think it's evidence. That's fine. This is the view. This is evidence.
Yeah. Well, I'm not. Okay. So I'm disagreeing with people's perceptions of it saying 4 billion years.
You can
in reality, it says 1.9.
If you can disagree with
no, it's not the academics. No, it's people that tell me. It's not academics who tell me that this is the number.
Gave you an academic source, Rutledge.
Okay. Yeah. So
if you want to disagree with the academics, that's fine.
Yeah, you're quoting the book that has has an unknown author and also claims to be from God.
I don't care. That's fine. Like you don't need to know the author. I don't care what it's claimed.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So well, sure. But I'm saying from the book though, it's the numbers that people are kidding. That's not even what the book says. Like they're not even running the numbers directly.
I don't care. This is a good evidence.
Okay, it's not my opinion though. I mean, like, look. Okay, you want to look at the metrics?
Stop. I
know we're in the weeds now.
I read you an academic source. I don't care if you agree. This is evidence. It's better than anything in your Bible. Your Bible's garbage. This is real good evidence. So even if the problems you think there is, because you think there's multiple interpretations.
Wait, what source are you reading?
I was reading it off the wiki, which has
the wiki.
It has links and references at the bottom, which are really good. And you can read a different one if you want. But that's better than your Bible. Your Bible has tons more interpretations, which are vague and ambiguous and don't give precise numbers and is wrong. So this example, with all of the problems you think it has.
Oh, it says 4.3 million. The wiki says 4.3 million human years.
Does it? Age of Earth.
Dude, I don't know, dude. It's all weird. Hinduism is weird, dude. Wait, hold on. I got
no, it says billion.
csubc.ca.
So this says billion. There's 1, 2, 3.
Oh wait,
4,
hold
5,
on.
6,
Now
7,
it's
8, 9.
okay.
This is 9 zeros here. This is billion. Do you know how to count? Because there's those 9
The
zeros.
Yugo cycle is called. Okay,
billion,
hold on.
Billion.
So here's the
billion.
calculation. It says there's 4 ages on Earth which keep circulating.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. To note out when it talks about like some of these calculations, you do know there's a large wave in between of which this number could actually be.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, between 3.5 and 15, that's kind of huge. Like, so you can make any number you want. But here's where it's going. It says there's 4.
I don't care. Stop.
Yeah, Yuga.
Stop.
Okay.
Stop. I don't care. This is better than anything in the Bible. With all of the problems you think is in this is better than any prediction in the Bible. Okay.
Wait, hold on. It cannot be better if it's not even, dude. Like, if people are gonna muddy the calculations, it's not better.
I agree, but the calculations in the Bible.
You agree that it's not better.
Bad.
Hold on. You just said you agree it's not better.
Oh my god. It's 50. This prediction is better than the even crappier predictions in the Bible. Now, I'm not a Hindu. I don't think Hinduism is true, but this prediction is evidence of Hinduism, for tiny, tiny amount, and it's better than every prediction in the Bible combined. Okay, that's the point here. So just like your inane argument that physics is less good than the God hypothesis, is wrong because the physics models are based on evidence and predictions, and so they're better than the God hypothesis because it makes no predictions. The Hinduism at least makes one prediction about the age of the Earth, which is closer. It's wrong. Like 4.3 billion is actually wrong. It's 4.5 billion is the age of the Earth, but it's closer than anything in the Bible. The Bible is wrong, and so this is better evidence than the Bible, even though it's still terrible evidence, which is incomparable to the amount of evidence in physics, which is real evidence, which is why it's better than all the God hypotheses. AP, what do you got for us?
It was good.
You got an argument, evidence thing you want to talk about? What's up?
Oh, I'm just curious about your argument for physicalism.
The physical models are the only ones that make successful predictions. Therefore, I believe physicalism is true and the other ones aren't.
So you say physical models are the only ones that make successful predictions. So you're saying that the physical models explains the predictions?
Yes.
So you're just measuring the probability of physicalism in virtue of just predictive power.
That's
why leave out like explanatory power?
So for all hypotheses, the ones that can successfully predict the future are the ones that are justified to believe are true. The ones that cannot predict the future are not justified to believe are true.
Okay, so let's just weigh in these two theories, for example. Let's say you have a theory, and your theory is that there's this, let's just use your analogy, the Bob analogy.
Sure.
There's this creature Bob in the space-time dimension, and because of this creature Bob, a gold apple just will appear in front of me in the next like 3 seconds. And it actually works, it actually occurs.
Sure.
And then let's say I have a contra explanance, and my theory is that, well, let's say there's this creator Bob, but this creator Bob does not exist in the space-time dimension. He exists in the non-spatial temporal dimension. And I predict that a golden apple will appear in the next 3 seconds, and that also occurs. In that case, we have two theories with, you could say, equivalent to predictive power and predictive success.
Sure.
So what are the theoretical or explanatory virtues you're going to appeal to as the symmetry breaker to determine the probability of one over the other?
You pick whichever one you want. They both have evidence. You can just pick.
Okay, so they both have evidence. So so then you then grant the idea that I can then just appeal to any Platonic theory or any theory regarding Platonism to predict the same things which occur in the universe, and there would be evidence.
So right? It has to be a novel prediction. You have to predict something that we don't already know yet. So in your example, Bob gives me a gold brick, and that was evidence of Bob. And then there's the non-Bob presents the apple. That's evidence of the non-Bob. So as long as you predict something novel that we don't know yet, the other hypotheses aren't already predicting, that would be evidence of your hypothesis. Being able to post hoc predict things that already happened is not evidence for anything. It's post hoc reasoning. We don't care about that at all.
Okay, so that's not what I'm asserting here. What I'm really basically saying is that, let's say, okay, so obviously at some point in time, the group of scientists themselves didn't have these set of novel testable predictions, right? So before they were capable of making these predictions, what establishes physicalism over Platonism?
Well, if there's no evidence, then nothing. So I'd say we need evidence first.
So you understand that the theories, like the predictions, aren't like the theories are what explains the predictions, not the other way around, right?
What?
Yeah. So you're basically saying that the predictions are going to be what determines
No.
the evidence for
No.
a particular
Again,
metaphysical
so
theory,
like,
but that's not going to be the case.
no. So again, when we start with the Bob hypothesis, I think there is an invisible being named Bob. And so you
Mhm.
start with the hypothesis. And if there is an invisible being named Bob, then a gold brick will appear. So the prediction is explained by the hypothesis, not the other way around. The evidence doesn't just give you a hypothesis. The hypothesis is a thing we don't know yet, which is then to predict something we don't know yet.
Okay, so we know that we basically extrapolate the law of gravity to exist in virtue of the novel testable predictions, uniformity principle, as scientists would like to call it.
No, there's no
Now,
uniformity. So
before we had
uniformity
these-
is, just to clarify, uniformity of nature is wrong. We don't care about that at all.
Really? So you don't
Yes.
think that the law of gravity is established through, or I guess nomic realism is established through like
What?
a inductive basis?
No, we do use induction. Uniformity of nature is not induction. We don't care about that at all. So like in physics,
No, uniformity is correlated to induction, actually.
no, it's not. It's literally not. So in physics, there is a model called Guth's early universe inflation, in which gravity was completely different. It was repulsive. It pushed things apart. We do not think it's uniform. We didn't know. We don't care about that at all. Nobody in science cares about this. This is a straw man theist put onto science that has literally nothing to do with science. We don't care. So you can put
Well,
whatever you want.
I could basically appeal to citations justifying that. But either way,
No, you
I
can't.
think that's an irrelevant point of my argument. I think my major argument is basically to establish
Go ahead.
the idea that, let's say, before the inductive appeal that we have, right, I guess scientists that had in the beginning, right, they basically had no evidence as to why physicalism is true or Platonism is true. So when they were capable of making these novel testable predictions, right,
Yeah.
how are they able to determine the predictions being more correspondent with physicalist theories over Platonist theories?
Well, so again, why is the gold brick appearing more correspondent to the Bob theory?
That's a question that you should answer, so I'm waiting for the
It's
answer.
because I started with the hypothesis Bob was going to do this. There are no other hypotheses to predict this. If it happens, that's evidence of the one I predicted would do
Okay,
this.
so so you understand that in this case, at least, before we have the inductive appeal or the evidential platform, which is the set of observations we have to extrapolate the law of gravity exists in, before we observe these experiences,
Then you have no evidence.
we
So
could
right. So
have
if
these.
I have
Wait,
no,
wait,
if
hold
I
on,
have
dear,
no
second,
evidence of
finish.
Bob,
Hey, just let me finish real quick.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was just gonna say we have these background hypotheses, right? Let's say someone has the hypothesis that Platonism is true, right? And someone else has the hypothesis that physicalism is true, and
Yep.
every observation we have is best explained by the physical model instead of non-physical models.
Well, no.
Right. When we have these
so again,
observations, how are we going to be able to
it's
determine the
only best
non-physical model
explanation
to be
if you
below the
make
physical
predictions.
model?
So it's only the best explanation if it makes novel predictions. That's it. So
Yeah, so if we have a case where in one case or in one situation, one is able to predict that the law of, or I guess something would fall to the ground. That's
Yep.
before we even make these observations.
Sure.
And the two persons who are predicting this, by the way.
Yep.
And one person is a Platonist, one person is a physicalist
then
or is
they're
a
both
nominalist.
equally supported.
Are going to be able to determine which one is above the other.
So if both models independently make predictions and those predictions are correct, they're equivalent. That's not what happened. What happened in history was physicalists made the predictions, physicalists got it right, Platonists didn't, and they made no progress. That's why most people are physicalists. So physicalism made
okay.
predictions. Platonism did not make predictions. Therefore, physicalism is the one that became more popular.
Wait, how do you know that the ancient Platonists never made any form of, I guess, predictive
wrote
judgment
things
regarding
down.
something falling to the ground in the next second? How do you know that?
Well, that wouldn't be a novel prediction because we see that happening already. So a novel prediction is predicting.
Wait, I'm talking about before the, for example, before like Isaac Newton.
Stop talking. So
why?
We see things fall. Like people have seen things fall for hundreds of thousands of years. So predicting things would fall is not a novel prediction. It's a post hoc explanation of something we already see. So if I predicted the sun will rise tomorrow, that's not a novel prediction because it's something we've already seen every day for our lives. So a novel prediction is predicting something we don't know yet, that we haven't seen before, a new thing.
So why are you acting as if this is attacking what I'm saying? I'm not saying that that's a novel prediction.
So
what are you talking
Platonists never did that. Physicalists did do that. Physicalists made predictions.
Wait, so what's the argument that physicists did that in the beginning?
There's tons of them. That's literally the history of science. So all tectonic plates, planetary moments, meteorite time frames, orbit of the Earth. This is all physicalist predictions. Physicalists making predictions. World is big rock goes around.
But
the
wait a
sun.
second. You're saying let's say physicists makes these predictions,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
How does these predictions have any relation to their metaphysical theory if it's just a scientific theory?
Because that's how theories work. So if I have a theory, physicalism is true, and Earth is a rock, and Earth is going around the sun, then I will predict the perihelion of Mercury, and I get it right. That's evidence of physicalism, just like it's evidence of Bob if I predict a gold brick.
Yeah, the issue here is that they don't have the hypothesis that physicalism is or is not true has no relation to their scientific theory regarding
No, again,
the tectonic
you're not
plates
understanding. You're
or
not understanding. So
gravity.
if I predict a gold brick will appear in front of me because Bob exists, there is no logical entailment that only Bob can predict the gold brick. Doesn't make a difference. If a gold brick appears, that is evidence of Bob. It's my hypothesis. Whatever is in my hypothesis, that's evidence. I do not. It does not
the
need to
issue
be
here is that
exclusionary. It does not matter.
Yeah, the issue is that their predictions they make about the empirical world isn't something in virtue of their physicalist
Again,
theories.
that does not matter.
Unless you have to demonstrate why that is the case.
Morons make that argument because they don't understand science. Anything in my hypothesis, anything I want.
That's an ad hominem fallacy, by the way.
Stop. No, it's not. No, ad hominem fallacy is when I say you're wrong because you're an idiot. No, you are an idiot.
Yeah, that's
and
not the
you
only
are
means
wrong.
of coming in ad hominem, actually.
You're done. So you are an idiot and you are wrong. So this is the common misunderstanding of people who don't understand philosophy. If a model makes novel, testable predictions and gets them right, it's evidence for that model and no other model. So it doesn't matter if you can post hoc take the things we already know and try to fit them into a different model. It doesn't matter if you can say, oh, this could be explained by something in my model. Irrelevant. Garbage. Doesn't make a difference. The only thing that matters is if I'm a physicalist, and as a physicalist, I predict that this is going to happen, the meteorite's going to come at this year, perihelion of Mercury, etc. That's evidence of physicalism. You're done. You're done. In order for Platonism or the other models to be true, they need to make testable predictions also. That's it. It doesn't matter if it can be explained by other models. Doesn't matter if you can post hoc reason it. Irrelevant. Doesn't matter if it's mutually exclusive to other hypotheses. Makes no difference. We don't need any of that garbage. The thing that makes testable predictions is the thing that we get evidence for. Period. End of discussion. Anybody else have any questions? Questions, comments, debate stuff? Raise your hand. Fine. Let AP back up until someone else wants to speak. Oh, D1. Let's do D1. I invited you up, D1. Can you join? Scotty, is the stage working? See if you can join. Is the stage broken? Why can't people come up? Message from Scotty. All right, cool. So yeah, you can join the stage. So it's just the other people not joining. All right. All right. Anybody else? Questions, comments, God stuff? If anybody's got anything, let me know. Raise your hand. Philosophy, morality. Feel free to come up. Today's Sunday. Castle King. Questions, comments, God, philosophy, morality. Anybody got any questions? Let me know. Working on starting an atheist church to provide affordable housing. If anyone wants to donate, please feel free to go to my Twitter, whatever, it's on there. People keep raising their hands, but cannot join the stage, apparently. There we go. There's one. I can't hear you. Let me refresh.
What if I wasn't here?
All right. I can hear you guys now. What's up?
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Okay. So you asked me, do I have any questions on what topics?
Anything you want. God, philosophy, morality, politics, whatever.
Yeah. You believe morality is objective or subjective?
Objective.
And what's the argument for that?
Moral naturalism.
And what is that?
Moral naturalism is the position that morality is a feature of the universe and that the consistent impulse of morality on humans as we gain in intelligence and resources causes us to become more moral over time, which is why we see moral progress through changes in moral intuition.
And what's the evidence?
Changes in moral progress because of moral intuition. So like ending slavery, women's rights, workers' rights, ending child labor, voting rights, LGBTQ rights. People are becoming more moral over time.
Isn't that based off people constructing these people to do so, or do you think that these things are happening willingly?
Well, they happen everywhere in all societies, everywhere over the world in the same general pattern. So it seems like it's the case that it's independent of social constructionism.
Okay. So when you say that it's a form of social construction,
No,
what do you mean?
independent of social constructionism, which means it's something that's caused not by society, but by something else.
Oh, but wouldn't that evidence that you're saying that since we see these things occurring through multiple parts of the world, wouldn't you lead to the idea that this thing has happened dependent of social construction?
No. So if it happens the same way in multiple different cultures, then that means it's independent of the cultures. The cultures don't cause it. Something else causes it. It's like we see it in animals too, which means it can't be socially constructed because they don't socially construct things.
Okay, that's all my. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Castle,
Teacher, I got a question for you, man.
Yep, go for it.
Why do you feel the need to steer people away from God?
I do not.
Huh?
I don't. I do not.
Your claim is atheist.
Yes.
Your beliefs center around no God.
Right.
So what then would you replace God with?
Morality.
Morality.
Yes.
Where do you get your morality from?
Moral naturalism.
Natural. Is it
Moral
natural for the
naturalism.
strongest to survive?
Is that
Is it natural for the strongest to take what they want?
Castle, natural morality doesn't mean all natural things are moral.
Oh, okay. Tell me. Explain to me.
So, like, moral naturalism is that there is a moral law, and there's some other laws that are not the moral law. Like gravity, not a moral law, but there's a moral law out there too.
Wait, slow down.
Yep.
Gravity is what to you?
A law of physics.
A phenomenon? The law of physics.
Law of physics, yeah.
Where does it all originate from? Where does all this power, all this ability come from?
Quantum fields.
Quantum fields.
Yep.
What is the quantum fields?
Quantum fields are quantum fields. They're the fundamental nature of reality.
Someone told you about that. You didn't make that up.
Right.
What is it? Can you explain to me?
Quantum fields.
Pretend I'm like a 6th grade kid or something, and I need to understand what you think.
Okay, quantum fields are the thing that exists at the very base of all reality and cause everything else to happen. Particles, energy, heat, they're all determined by quantum fields. It's the stuff that makes gravity work. It's the stuff that makes time work. It's the stuff that makes energy work. It's the thing that makes up everything else.
So quantum fields is what you call God.
Nope,
That's what you call God.
No, there's no consciousness. Doesn't have any.
There's no consciousness.
Right. We've been over this a few times.
It just is. It just is. Right.
Well, something
before you and I were born, it was there already.
Yep, it was already there. Yep.
Okay. Did you know that that's what a lot of people believe with God? God was there already from the beginning.
I do know that. Yes.
Yeah. So you, in a way, believe in God too.
No.
Quantum fields. No. That's the name of your God.
Nope, because God requires consciousness. This has no consciousness, therefore it is not God.
Then where do you get the morality from?
It's a part of the nature of reality.
Nature that was created by the quantum fields?
No, it's part of the quantum fields.
It's part of it.
Yeah.
But because of the quantum fields, we have nature.
Nature is just all of reality. So the quantum fields are also a part of nature.
I'm saying you are here and I'm here because of the quantum fields in your book.
Yes.
Right? Hey, ultimately, we're all a part of the cosmic space dust, right?
Yes. Yep.
Nitrogen, carbon, and what are the other elements that make us up?
Oxygen,
that make us human beings.
Helium.
Oxygen, hydrogen, helium, carbon.
Yeah.
Well, what else?
Other, the most famous element, other.
And then what is that thing? What is the ingredient that causes us to be able to think?
It's different combinations of those chemicals that you just listed.
Oh, is that right?
Yep.
Well, so the humans have more of it in the brain than other creatures on Earth?
It's not about the amount. It's about the pattern.
The pattern?
Yep.
Oh, what do you mean by that?
So cognitive ability is the processing of information through a particular pattern of those chemicals. So those chemicals, if they're organized in a particular way, they can transfer information in a particular manner that produces consciousness, kind of like a computer. Like a computer is made of silicon, but not every block of silicon is a computer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you need some specific organization of silicon to make a computer.
So you think if you get enough of what you need, you can make a conscious?
Oh my God, no.
You can make it yourself with the
raw
materials?
Is a brick of silicon a computer?
Of course not.
Right. So it's not the amount. The amount of silicon, even if I take another brick and put it next to the first brick, it doesn't make a computer.
Yeah. What's that magic spark? What's that spark of life that you use in order to gain the consciousness, memories and things like that? Patterns.
Yes.
Patterns once again.
Yes.
So
it's always
have you figured out the pattern that creates the human being and the way we think?
Yes. It's called the pattern of evolution.
The pattern of evolution.
Yep.
Oh, so you follow Darwin's teachings?
Darwin was the first iteration of evolution. There's now more modern versions.
Uh-huh. Didn't Darwin believe in God too?
No.
No.
Yeah, he stopped believing in God.
Oh, I'm pretty sure there's a famous quote from him that says God in it.
There's lots of famous quotes that say God. That doesn't mean they believe in God. Like Stephen Hawking used the word God,
What?
but he didn't believe in God.
In vain, most likely.
No.
Stephen Hawking doesn't believe in God.
So Castle, why do you think that most scientists, most philosophers, most experts in all the fields don't believe in God?
Most experts in all scientific fields? Is that what you said?
Yep. So like the National
Oh,
Academy of Sciences,
I
the
don't know
Royal
about that
Society.
claim.
It's about,
I don't know about that
you
claim.
can Google this. You can say there was a study done, the National Academy of Sciences, the Royal Society, about 90% do not believe in God. So the higher up you go, the more intellectual, the more educated, less and less believe in God, because once you get to those levels of understanding, there's less evidence of God.
Oh, no, that's wrong. I've heard of the opposite.
Okay, well,
I've heard of the opposite, where scientists who are atheists got so far that they realized, wow, this has to be because of God.
Right. So
There's
so
something
there are
that we can't
studies.
answer.
There are studies literally on this, and the more educated people become, the less they believe in God. That's just a fact. So,
Oh, no, that's not a fact.
literally a fact.
Now, educated, you mean educated as far as keeping up with all the notes that the other scientists before them wrote down and expanding upon those notes, like that? Educated?
No.
Where they had to learn at a university about all this scientific stuff?
Maybe.
Right?
Maybe. Yes.
That's
Learning is
what you
good.
just said.
Yes, learning is good.
Yeah, reading the books,
Yes.
studying those books, taking those tests,
Yes, understanding
impressing the
reality.
professors,
Yep.
impressing them with your scores, with your papers at the final. Yeah, I understand.
And
I've
being
been to
able to
school
make
before.
novel,
I've been to college.
and then being able to make novel predictions and understand reality, and then build things and do things in reality that other people can't because you
Understand
have.
reality.
Yeah.
What do you know about reality? Tell me, T-Jump. What's your reality
That
like?
there is no God.
There is no God. Then how do you explain yourself when you look in the mirror?
Evolution.
Evolution.
Yep.
So you believe that you were once the little tadpole in the sea, and that you
No,
crawled up onto
no,
the land and
no,
became
that was-
an amphibian, and from that you became some kind of lizard, and from there you turned into a bird, and then into a monkey, and now here you are.
Yes, literally, that was
That's
all
what you believe?
literally me from the point I was born. It was all just transitions from tadpoles to birds. Literally all me. Yes.
You were a tadpole?
Yep. Me
You
personally.
believe that?
Yes. Yep. Me
Well,
personally. I
I'm
was a
sorry to
tadpole.
say, we're not in the same arena. You're a
You're right.
tadpole. I am an orca. Okay? You're a tadpole. I'm an orca. Remember that. Okay, T-Jump?
Okay. Okay.
Listen, man. I'm just joking here. Let's be serious, okay? You really don't believe in God?
Yep.
What happened in your life to make you feel that way?
The evidence doesn't indicate it. So I looked at evidence. Evidence doesn't indicate
What
God.
do you see when you look out into that beautiful blue sky on a summer day?
Light.
With those white clouds and that golden sun with those God rays. You
I
don't
see light.
God?
No, I see light.
What? Yeah, you better be thankful to God that you see that light.
Nope.
That you have two eyes to see,
Nope.
two ears to hear.
Nope.
What? You're not thankful. You know, isn't that's something? When I was an atheist, I had no one to give thanks to for all the wonderful things in my life. And that's what you're describing to me right now.
You can still make up people to be thankful to. I can be thankful to a milk carton.
What are you thankful to?
Nothing. I don't need to be thankful.
Nothing.
Yep.
Oh,
Sunny, snowy banana. What do you got? You got anything interesting for us? I can't hear you. 1 second. I'll refresh again. All right. Now I can hear you. Banana, what do you
got? Okay. So you a couple conversations ago, you said that what you value is like conscious experience, right?
Sure.
But that conscious experience doesn't have to have a it doesn't have to have any sort of memory or anything like that, right?
Sure.
Sure?
Yes, sure.
Oh, do you value? You said sure?
Yes, sure.
Yeah. So why would a conscious experience that like has no memory whatsoever, why is that valuable?
Because I think morality entails that anything that is conscious has value.
Do you think I mean, let's take just like two separate things. One is like some entity that has no memory whatsoever. It's completely incapable of retaining any new information or any old information for that matter. It's only capable of experiencing in the moment. And then let's say that there's like a person who they lived their whole life, lived to 90, whatever, and then they uploaded their consciousness. Now they're dead. There's no more experience, but you have like all their memories and whatnot encapsulated in.
It would be more moral to kill the consciousness in the present moment than to delete the data on the hard drive.
It would be more moral?
Yep. More immoral.
Okay, so then
more immoral to kill the consciousness.
It would be more immoral.
Yes, to kill the consciousness than to delete the data.
Why is that?
Because it's conscious. Consciousness has value. If the data isn't conscious, then you can delete it all you want. It's not immoral.
Well, I mean, just because consciousness has value doesn't mean that nothing else has value, right?
True, but I don't think anything that is non-conscious has value.
Okay. So like literally like it doesn't have value, period.
Moral value.
Like it only has moral value.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, would you not say that like your interactions with those things as a conscious being yourself, like that would give that thing some sort of value?
Not moral value, no.
Not moral value?
No. So like me interacting with a rock doesn't make the rock moral.
Well, hold on. I mean, didn't you say that like any imposition of will is immoral? Though?
Yes. So a rock limiting my will would be immoral, but me interacting with the rock, I can't make the rock moral. I can't do anything moral to the rock.
Well, I mean, how does that work?
Like anything, the rock doesn't have a will, so I can't impose on the rock's will. I can't assist the rock's will. So if there's some like data on a drive or whatever, I can't assist in the will of the data on the drive because it doesn't have a will. So you have to have some kind of conscious entity to do moral things to it.
Well, right. To do moral things to it, and immoral things to it, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like but those non-conscious things, you can't ever do something moral or immoral to it, but it can do things moral or immoral to you.
Yes, because you have a will. So if it imposes on your will, that's immoral. If it assists your will, that's moral. But you can never impose on its will, or because it doesn't have one.
And so you don't think that you don't think that that it's necessarily a will imposing on another will that's immoral. It's just anything imposing on a will that's immoral.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Fuck, where was I going with this? I don't even remember. Anyways, so you said like in the best of all possible worlds, you also described like morality as a. Oh, I remember where I was going. Okay, so the entity that just has conscious experience, it doesn't have any memories, it doesn't process, it doesn't retain any new information, it doesn't hold on to any information whatsoever. I mean, do you feel that there's any sort of difference between, let's say, just torturing it infinitely, like to the infinite, like the infinite suffering? There we go. Infinite suffering for 5 million years versus 5 minutes, or is it equally bad, or are they equally bad? Because like it can't ever tell 1 second from the next. It doesn't even know that there was any other seconds. It only knows the immediate moment.
It doesn't matter if it can tell. So it's immoral regardless of whether or not it can tell. So more suffering presumably is worse if it has, suppose, the same desire to not be harmed. The more you harm it, the more immoral it is.
Okay. Do you think it would be more immoral to torture that thing that can only, live in the present moment? Or would it be more immoral to torture something that can actually, create memories and retain them?
Probably the same.
Probably the same. So why
different individuals can have two different desires, and so depending on, supposing they have the exact same desires, it would probably equally as immoral. But the conditions of reality, say one person who has memories of the past, could be more immoral if they don't have the option to delete those memories. So like if they're forced to remember their pain, then there's an additional immorality being done to them by the nature of reality. Now, if you force them to remember those pains, you would be doing the additional morality. But if all you're doing is causing the physical pain, then you are causing equal morality in both cases. But in the case where someone has memory, the nature of reality is causing them an additional immorality because they have memories they don't want.
Okay. So then, as so long as they have memory and they have memory of that suffering, then they would be
if they don't want it.
That are suffering.
Yeah, if they don't want it, then that would be immoral.
If they don't want it. Okay. Oh crap! Now I forgot where I was going with the other thing. All right, well, whatever. Anyways, that's kind of what I was wondering, just like the memory thing, because like I don't necessarily see how. I just don't understand like why just having an experience without any sort of being able to like how do you in the best of all possible worlds, once you have a conscious experience, it's automatically elevated to a certain level.
Yep.
So a conscious being, like, would that include memory?
Yes.
The capacity to have memory?
Yes.
It would?
Yep.
Okay. So would you say that a conscious being that has memory is more valuable than a conscious being that doesn't have memory?
No.
No, you would not.
No.
Why not?
Well, even if you're not a rational being, you still have moral significance. So, like, I'd say the morality of killing a child or a dog or a adult human is the same. They're all conscious. Killing them all is immoral.
So, stepping on that, well, okay.
Yeah, if ants were conscious, then it would be immoral, yeah.
Okay. I was actually I had to ask. I was going to ask first if you thought ants were conscious, or do you think that like there's a
maybe? I don't know.
Maybe. But like if there's any conscious experience,
then it's immoral.
So do you think that?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think that like one conscious experience can be more can have more than another, or is just
maybe sure?
Sure,
it can. Doesn't really make a difference though, because it's like a on-off switch. It's binary. Either you have moral value or you don't.
Well, sure, but I mean, wouldn't you say that like destroying
be pragmatically
more consciousness is bad, is worse than destroying less consciousness?
As an individual, probably no. I'd say it's either 100% immoral or 100% not immoral. So if you're killing a conscious entity of any kind, all conscious entities deserve to be in this best possible world state, and so you're depriving it of that ability, which is equally as immoral, regardless of its pragmatic current limitations of consciousness. So if you take an ant, and that ant deserves to be intellectually rational in the best of all possible worlds, you kill it, so it can't. That's equally as immoral as killing an adult human.
something can be like absolutely immoral, but just something being absolutely immoral does not make it the most immoral thing that you can do. It just means that action is itself immoral, right?
Killing any conscious agent is always going to be immoral, to the same degree.
I mean, I'm just not really seeing how it could possibly be to the same degree.
Because you're depriving that conscious entity from being in the best of all possible worlds permanently.
Well, I mean, like,
unless it like wants to die. So as long as it doesn't want to die, presumably it's immoral to kill it.
Yeah, we'll just always assume that it doesn't actually want to die. If it even has like a conception of like what death even is. I don't know that an ant knows. But would you say that, okay, so let's split it away from individual beings. Would you say that killing two conscious beings is worse than killing one?
Yes.
Okay, so it's worse to kill two ants than, assuming ants are conscious, it's worse to kill two ants than it is to kill one human being.
In the best of all possible worlds, sure. It's pragmatically not pragmatic, but yep, sure.
Okay, what about in our world?
Well, our world's pragmatic, so it's objectively immoral to kill any conscious entity. For pragmatic reasons, we ignore most of them, which is immoral. I don't think we should. But for pragmatic reasons, we ignore them. But yes, it's more immoral to kill ants than humans, if like by number of conscious beings killed, if they're conscious.
So you don't think like the capacity to experience like how much you can experience matters at all. It's
Nope.
only the fact that you can experience anything in general.
Yep.
Like, even if it's like you can only experience one type of thing, period.
So any
and
conscious,
some other entity can experience.
Well, the
10,
argument
like
is
10,
that any conscious entity deserves morally the ability to be the perfect rational agent in the best of all possible worlds. So even if like there's a baby who has essentially no cognitive abilities, killing it is still immoral, just as immoral.
I understand. It's just like just because two things are immoral, like they're both considered immoral, and they're always going to be considered immoral. It does not mean that they're equally immoral. Well, it's like
the same action done to two individuals who have equivalently desires to not experience that action would be equivalently immoral, regardless of their level of consciousness.
I don't know about
unless they can, like, as long as their level of experience is the same too. Yeah.
Well, yeah, as long as they're okay, sure. I mean, like I can agree with that, but it's like I don't think that like a dog is going to have the same level of experience as a human.
Well, yes, like if I literally can't feel pain, then stabbing me is going to be less immoral than someone who can feel pain.
Yeah, but it's still immoral.
As long as I don't want it, yeah. So if I don't want to be stabbed and you stab me, that would be less immoral than if I don't feel pain than stabbing someone who can feel pain and also doesn't want to be stabbed and doesn't want to feel pain.
Right, exactly. So then, like, well, yeah, I would agree. So then I would also say that stomping on two ants is not equally as bad as
only if there's this extra condition. Like, I want to experience this. I don't want to experience this. All these extra desires.
Yeah, we're just always assume that they don't.
Simply like saying simply having the cognitive ability makes zero difference. So, like, let's say there's a super intelligent super being with lots of cognitive abilities, but doesn't really care about anything. Doesn't care if it dies very much. But there's a small child who really doesn't want to die. Killing the small child is more immoral because you're imposing on more will than the super intelligent being. So the amount of intelligence is irrelevant. That doesn't make a difference.
Well, no. So no, I think it is relevant. If again, like assume that they equally don't want to die.
Then it's equally as immoral to kill them.
I don't know, because I feel like if one entity is able to experience more,
doesn't make a difference. So again, imposition on will is the immoral part. So if the will to not die is the same, then it's an equally imposition of will to kill both, regardless of whether or not they can do other things. Unless, like, if I specifically will to do lots of other things and not die, then killing me both causes me to die and prevents me from doing those other things, which is a greater immorality than, say, if I don't care if I do those things and just simply don't want to die. And so presumably an ant doesn't want to die, but also doesn't know about the goodness of chocolate ice cream. And so I want to not die and want to eat chocolate ice cream. So it would be potentially more immoral to kill me than the ant, because you're not only infringing on my will to not die, you're also infringing on my will to eat ice cream, which the ant does not have. But simply my cognitive ability, if I had no desire to eat ice cream and only have the desire to not die, then killing me and killing the ant would be equivalent.
Right. I mean, yeah, I guess so. Like if you were to have just a human floating in a black void for eternity and an ant floating in a black void for eternity.
And yeah, the only desire, I have literally only one desire. I do not want to die and nothing else. Now, obviously humans have many other desires and many other wills. And so killing a human would be a greater imposition because they have many other willed things than humans. But simply the cognitive capacity is irrelevant. That part doesn't make a difference.
Okay. So it's also like the number of individual desires that the thing has.
The number of impositions of will. Yes.
Well, I mean, like you're imposing on one being's will in one instance. The only thing that you're like, so it's like it's not a greater number of impositions. Yeah, it's just
So like if you have multiple things you will to do, and I'm stopping you from doing all of those things, that's a greater immorality than if there's only one thing I'm stopping someone from doing, as long as the amount of desire is the same.
Okay, well, I mean, let's say that like there's like one guy and he wants to do like maybe like 5 things. He has like five things that he really wants to do.
Yep.
Everything else, like maybe he kind of wants to do it, but not really. It's take it or leave it. But there's 5 things he really wants to do, and there's another guy who he wants to do literally everything. Killing the guy who wants to do literally everything maximally would be worse than
If the
killing the other guy.
amount of desire or the amount of will to do everything was greater than the amount of will for the 5 things plus the other things, then yeah. If they both equivalently will to do things at the same rate, then the number wouldn't matter anymore. But as long as the desires, the amount of the desire is the same, then it would be equivalent.
Okay. So then,
like if
on
someone
average,
if someone really, really, really wants to eat chocolate ice cream, then it's more immoral to not give them chocolate ice cream because it's like the most important thing in the world to them or whatever. So, if someone just doesn't really care, then it's not really that immoral to not give them chocolate ice cream. It's less immoral.
Okay. Well, what if somebody
like it's pretty obvious.
has
Like if you don't care about something, then not receiving that thing would not be immoral, right?
I guess I might disagree, but not in your framework. No, I guess not. Yeah. But so what if what if somebody like only like kind of is kind of against their will being imposed upon, but somebody else really wants to impose on their will? Is it more?
It would be more moral to help the person. Like there would be more moral actions in helping the person to impose. There would still be a level of immorality, but the net amount of morality would be greater. Because if like you're helping one person or hurting another, you're doing one moral action, one immoral action. And if the amount you're helping the other person is greater than the amount you're hurting the other person, then the amount of morality is greater than the amount of immorality, but they don't cancel out. So you're still doing an immoral action.
Okay, so you're still doing an immoral action.
Yep.
Well, so there's still some immorality taking place, but it's a net positive.
Sure.
Okay.
So like trolley problem, you can kill one, save 5. One immoral action, 5 moral actions, net positive.
I mean, yeah, it depends on how you define it, because you could also just say that like any action that has a net positive morality is just entirely good.
That I think is wrong. That model I think is inherently wrong. That's utilitarianism.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that model entails that you can justify any horrible action as being literally the moral action as long as the consequences are net positive, which I think is inherently wrong and one of the impetuses for my model.
So what can you give an example of like an action that would have net positive?
Killing one to save
outcome.
5, trolley problem. So killing one person to save 5 people. If it is the case that morality is dependent on the positive outcome, then it is literally moral to kill the one person. I think it is never moral to kill the one person, even though it's justified. It is still immoral to kill the one person, and you should still feel guilt and remorse and try to, appease or make up for the fact that you've done an immoral action by killing the one to save the 5. Prison is another good example. Putting people in prison, it is not moral to put people in prison. It's pragmatically justified because you're saving their victims, but it's still immoral to put people in prison, and you should try to help cure them, not punish them. It's not good to punish them. It's necessary.
Right. So, so let's say, and right now this is I'm more so just joking. I'm just messing around. But let's say that the entirety of planet Earth, 8 billion people. Like generally, most people don't want to die, but there's a limit, I guess, to that desire. Let's say there was like one guy though, and he just like really badly wanted everybody to die, and so he was trying to make a super bomb to blow up the planet Earth. Would we be immoral to stop him if his desire to wipe out all life on Earth was like just greater?
Sure. Well, no.
Maximally.
So the amount of the desire wouldn't make a difference there. So like, hypothetically, this isn't the best.
Well, you said that the amount of desire made.
Well, no, it's if he has any desire to do something, and it's within his rights, it's immoral to stop him. So it doesn't matter. The amount of desire wouldn't make it not immoral. It would still be immoral. So say he has like a tiny desire to do something that he has the right to do, it would be immoral to stop him.
Yeah, it would be immoral, but like, I mean, if we go back to like the example of like two people.
Yep.
One guy has like 5 strong desires. The other guy has 10,000 strong desires, and each of their desires are each individual desire is equal in strength, but one just has more of them. You would say that it'd be more immoral to kill the guy that has the larger number of desires.
Right.
Okay, well, let's say like
well, you just asked,
two people
would it
both
be
have
immoral? And so the question, would it be immoral, is a binary of, is there any amount of immorality? The amount of desire there wouldn't make a difference. So if you're asking a comparative question, would it be more moral to help the individual blow up the planet than it would be immoral than immoral actions done by killing people? If like literally everyone on the planet like barely cared if they survived or not, like little to no caring, and the one guy really had a really strong will to blow everyone up or something, then yes, you could hypothetically have it such that the amount of will benefited would outweigh the amount of will imposed upon somehow. I don't know how you would do that, but hypothetically, in which case, yes, it would be, there would be a net moral action done by helping people blow up the planet, as long as people barely cared if they lived.
what I mean, I don't know what you mean. What you would say is barely. It's like
well, it's just a comparative number to say that it's less than the amount of people wanting to blow up the planet or something. Again, this is not possible in the best of all possible worlds because you can't impose on other people's wills. But hypothetically,
oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I
just
don't
like
also,
in a world
that's not really
similar to ours.
possible. Like, I don't see how it would be possible for one person's to have some kind of cognitive ability to will something to a greater extent.
He has a really big brain.
I don't see how that.
He has a lot of capacity for desire. He's
don't
just
see how that
like,
was possible. But again, that would be like
brains.
eating a person turning into a pretzel for all eternity. Just a thing that wouldn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course it probably wouldn't happen. I mean, but what if it did? No, I'm kidding. Yeah, no, I'm just messing around.
But still immoral. So,
So
wouldn't be possible in the best of all possible worlds.
Yeah. So okay. So then, what exactly is? Because again, like obviously, yeah, I can agree with you. Like, two things are both immoral, but it's like surely you recognize that one action can be more immoral than another.
Sure.
In positions of will, with the same number of entities, like one man, another man, same number of entities. What would make imposing on the will of one more immoral than imposing on the will of another? Is it like the strength of the desire? Is it just the strength of desire? Is it the number of desires? Or is it a combination of both? Like what specifically?
Yeah, this would be the combination of the strength and number of the desires. So like obviously the number of desires, if you have 0 strength, is still 0. But this is not
right.
Really interesting question at all.
Well, okay, well.
I mean, I'm bored. I want to move on. Talon, what do you got?
All right.
Talon Strong. Let me know if he's speaking and I can't hear him.
Oh, I can speak, but Talon, you can go first.
Or yeah, AP, you can go because I can't hear Talon at all.
You can't hear Talon?
No. All right, so I'll refresh 1 sec.
Okay, cool.
All right.
I think it's his mic bugging.
Talon, can you say something just to test if I can hear you?
Can you hear me now?
Yep, go for it.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'm a theist. So I wanted to debate you on theism versus atheism.
Okay. Like a formal debate on my channel is $75, or otherwise you can just ask a question. Go ahead, go for it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have $75.
Get a job.
Okay, so T-Jump, I think that we got off on the wrong foot in our prior conversation, but I think that there was a response I wanted to make specifically to your arguments relating to novel testament predictions. Do you want me to line the argument real quick?
Sure.
The first thing I was going to ask you pretty much is basically if you believe that we ought to be like a Platonist or a physicalist prior to making these novel testament predictions.
No.
Okay, so if it is the case that these metaphysical theories are basically not necessary in the process of the scientific model, then how does it follow from these metaphysical theories that they are more probable in virtue of these scientific models?
Well, it doesn't make sense because nothing's necessary to be the case. Like all models are possibilities by definition. And so of the possibilities, the ones that can predict the future are the ones you should accept. There's no necessarily you should accept one. No.
Okay, so my argument wasn't basically that scientific models are necessarily correct. I am saying to you that if it is a case that the metaphysical theories, like for example Platonism or nominalism or physicalism are not relevant in the virtue or in respects of analyzing which scientific theory is the best exponent for exponendums, then how would it be the case that simply wait? I was just gonna say,
well, what you're saying doesn't make sense. There's too much gibberish in there. If I have a hypothesis and the hypothesis makes a prediction and the prediction happens, it is now entailed that that is evidence of the hypothesis. Period. So it seems like what you're saying is that it is not necessarily the case that this one hypothesis excludes all other alternatives, which is irrelevant. We don't care about that. Underdetermination, irrelevant.
Well, I don't see how the metaphysical theory is making a prediction. All you're saying is that, well, because of physicalism, then we can make predictions regarding tectonic plates or, for example, law of gravity. For one, I'd like to place the question whether it is actually this metaphysical theory which is making these novel testable predictions, or rather, the question just to be refers to this specifically.
It's a brain. So if I make a prediction, if I use a model to make a prediction, the model is making the prediction. That's all you need. There's no other data.
Oh, okay. So I'll just respond by saying, are you finished or no?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was just saying to you that, I mean, these theories that we're talking about with respect to Platonism, physicalism, nominalism, these are all metaphysical theories. So I was going to say that automatically they wouldn't be applicable or even relevant to the scientific analysis of certain theories or analyzing predictions regarding the empirical world.
Irrelevant nonsense. I can make any theory I want.
How is it irrelevant nonsense?
I can make any theory I want. God exists. Naturalism is true. Magical potatoes exist. If I make predictions, those predictions are true. It's evidence of everything in my hypothesis, no matter what I include. I include anything I want.
Okay, so my last response on this specific point is going to be, well, if it is the case that, and please, I would really appreciate if you don't interrupt me. I'm just going to make this last point before asking something else. If it is the case that these physical theories are logically necessary for the building or the construction of these scientific models, then simply wait, just
what you're saying does not make sense. It does not track with
I'll just paraphrase it, okay?
Okay. Like there's no necessary. There's no necessary involved in anything I've said. Or
I'll try to make it make sense, okay?
No necessary. Get rid of necessary. Get rid of the word necessary.
Okay. So I was going to say this. I'll just put it in a different way for it to make sense, okay? So I was just going to say this, right? Which is basically, if the scientific models are basically obviously constructed based on testable predictions, right?
Sure.
And for example, being a Platonist or being a nominalist or being a physicalist is not required for us to build these scientific models, then using these scientific models to establish probability of these metaphysical theories is going to be a non sequitur in the sense
I've already debunked this. What your argument is that you want a piece of evidence that exclusively indicates physicalism over idealism. This is dumb. This is called underdetermination. Any piece of evidence you have can be explained by infinitely many hypotheses. We do not care. What matters is which one predicted it.
Wait, don't you think the scientific problem?
What matters?
I was going to ask you this then.
Well,
don't you think the scientific problem of underdetermination can be solved?
No.
Hello?
No, it can't be solved. It doesn't make any sense. There's no evidence that.
Oh, so you think it is logically impossible?
Sort of. Yes.
Okay, so what's the logical contradiction in basically demonstrating a view to be more epistemologically warranted than another view to solve the problem of underdetermination?
So the problem of underdetermination is that any piece of evidence can be explained by infinitely many hypotheses. Like, for example, I can say the entire universe was created by magical farting pixies 5 minutes ago, and we all have the memories that the magical farting pixies implanted in us. There is no way to prove that wrong with some piece of evidence we find. Any piece of evidence we find can be explained by magical farting pixies 5 minutes ago. So I don't. Yes, that's there's no way to.
Yeah.
Solve
So
that
with all
problem.
due respect, Sir T-Jump, go ahead.
Well, there's no way to solve that problem.
So with all due respect, Sir T-Jump, I was going to basically say that when I asked you if it is logically impossible for this problem to be solved, your response is that it is sort of the case. So then I asked you what is a logical contradiction, and when I asked for the logical contradiction, you then went ahead and gave me the definition of the scientific problem of underdetermination, which I already understand perfectly.
Right.
And then you then said that there's no means of solving this problem. But I think that what if, for example, we understand there are theoretical virtues and explanatory virtues that exist, right? Like, for example, your
none of those solve the
unification,
problem.
your parsimony, your simplicity. Yes. So why can't we just appeal to these virtues to basically
none of them
solve
the problem? They aren't a solution to anything.
So you don't think like probability theories can be appealed to like basically raise the probability for parts to reveal the other?
Well, you can. They just don't work. They're not used because they don't differentiate imagination from reality. Like you can try. They just don't work.
So wait a second. So when you subscribe to the belief, like for example, that physicalism is true or atheism is true, you grant that theism is just as justified as atheism or theism or atheism, right?
No. Again, because underdetermination isn't a justification. Novel predictions are. The ones that make novel predictions are justified. The ones that don't are unjustified. With whatever virtues you want, still unjustified. The fact that they can explain the other data.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, the novel testable predictions are just the empirical observations we have, and then we basically, as scientists would do, or metaphysicians
that's evidence.
would do.
That's real evidence. So all the principles that you list, the whatever the virtues and things, all garbage. They're nothing. They're garbage, waste of time. The ability to predict the future.
Well, it's going to depend, right? Because
no, it doesn't. It doesn't depend. It doesn't depend. They're all garbage. They're all just throw them away. They're garbage. The only thing that matters is can you predict the future. Then it's justified. If you can't, not justified.
Okay. It seems as if you're like an empiricist when it comes to like justification, because like another person can respond by saying that they take conceptual justification as evidence.
Okay,
and if you grant that, like for example, all the empirical observations we have are going to be contingent on certain transcendental categories or conceptual schemes, which gives these observations intelligibility, then how is it going to be the case that these conceptual ideas, which grounds these empirical observations or make them intelligible, is unnecessary or irrelevant or is not in form of probability raising justification at all?
The reason we've already debunked all of that garbage is because none of it works. None of it works in reality. Predictions work.
Okay, so let me just put it a different way then. Okay, I'll just put it a different way then. Okay, so I was just gonna say that with respect to the novel testable predictions, it appears as if the novel testable predictions are just merely the empirical observations we experience.
No, again, this is
as a means of basically, about the world. Yeah,
you keep not understanding. Novel predictions work. Virtues don't work. Novel predictions take us to the moon. They give science. They give technology. They expand the life. They work. Virtues give us nothing. They do not work. They make no progress ever in reality for anything. They're useless.
Yeah, that's just a pragmatist account of epistemology. Why should I accept that?
That's how we establish which ones are better than the other ones. Ones that work are better than ones that don't work. Yes.
Yeah, so you're just saying that, okay, so again, this is a pragmatist account of epistemology, right?
Yes,
and besides,
it works.
The novel testable predictions are...
define why virtues are garbage. They don't work to do anything. Predictions work to do things.
Okay, so the thing is, the virtue, the novel testable prediction...
If virtues were better than predictions, then we would grant that they are a better way to justify beliefs. They don't work.
But wouldn't the novel testable prediction be a part of predictive power success, which is an exponential virtue of theories?
Predictive power is just the ability to explain things that we see. Everything has infinite predictive power. Magical farting pixies has infinite predictive power. That predictive power is garbage. We don't care. Irrelevant.
Well, predictive power is in alignment with predictive success. It basically measures the power of a theory to predict the future, or to make predictions about the experimental world.
No, it has nothing to do with the future. Experimental power is the ability to predict past data. Future data is something different. So experimental or explanatory power is the ability to explain the data we have, past tense. Irrelevant. We don't care about that. Go away. Magical farting pixies have infinite...
You're kind of bugging a little bit.
What?
You're kind of bugging a little bit. Is it just me or...
Like,
yeah.
See, my chat...
No, you're better now. Yeah, you're better now.
My chat seems to be working fine. But yeah, so explanatory power is garbage. It's the ability to explain the past data that we have. Explanatory power is literally the ability to explain the current data set. That's all it means. We don't care about that.
Okay.
Magical farting
yeah, so the thing is that...
have infinite explanatory power. It's irrelevant.
Okay, so I think that these things would be relevant when it comes to metaphysical theories, but I mean,
no,
I was just going to basically pose the question, which is...
level of the theory makes no difference.
You don't think something being a better explanation makes it a more likely explanation?
Well, your principles don't make something a better explanation. Explanatory power doesn't make something a better
Okay, so think of it like this. So would you grant parsimony to be like something which raises the justification of a view?
Nope. 0%.
Hello?
No, it does not at all.
Okay, so what if I just justify Occam's razor in virtue of Bayesian probability?
All garbage. I don't care about any of that. So let's say we have a theory that is...
Okay, so wait.
Well, let's say we have
so you're familiar with the...
Okay,
so you're familiar with like,
let's say we have
right?
a theory that is super, super complicated, the opposite of Occam's razor, lots of extra entities, whatever, magical farting pixies, Bob, the uncreated unicorn being, all of those things, but it predicts the future. It wins. 100%. It could be the least parsimonious thing possible. And you can have a super parsimonious theory. The one that makes predictions wins every time, 100%.
Okay, so let's say we have two theories then. Let's say we have two theories, right? One doesn't make any predictions. Or, no, sorry, neither of them makes any form of predictions regarding the
Then they're
extramental
both
world. But one is
garbage.
more parsimonious than the
Then
other.
they're both
Will you not
garbage.
grant the one which is more parsimonious to be the more epistemically justified theory?
Both garbage. Throw them away. Complete
Okay,
waste of time.
so what's your view on the principle of indifference in Bayesian probability?
Bayesian probability has tons of problems. I'm not a fan of Bayesian probability. It only applies to things that have an empirical basis, like dice rolling or whatever. Has no basis on things like metaphysics.
Okay, so wait a second. So you're saying that things which are empirical are, sorry, because it is only empirically related, then that means it is irrelevant or it's garbage when it comes to metaphysical discourses. So then why would you appeal to novel tested predictions?
I didn't say any of that at all. So I said Bayesian epistemology can only be used to justify things that have an empirical basis. Bayesian epistemology cannot be used for anything else. Completely useless in the case of metaphysics.
So let's focus on the principle of indifference, which is what I'm postulating, right? What's your issue with that?
For what? What's the argument?
The principle of indifference says that.
What do you think what are you using the principle of indifference to do?
Is to basically demonstrate why Occam's razor is basically something which can raise the probability of a theory.
It's wrong. I don't care.
Okay, so do you want me to explain the correlation, or do you not want me to explain the correlation?
I don't care. I know the principle of indifference. I don't care if it doesn't make predictions. I don't care.
So wait a second. So you grant. So basically, your whole entire epistemology is just entirely dependent and parasitic on predictive. I guess you could say
you can predict the
predictive
future,
success
you
or
have
something's
evidence.
ability to predict the experimental world.
Yep, anything. So if you have magical pixie leprechauns farting in the wind and you can predict the future, you have more evidence than every model that can't predict the future.
So wait a second. So let's get this clear. So you're just saying that predictive power, or what's the argument for predictive success or predictive? I guess you could say predictive. Predictive success.
Our ability to
being the only justificator metric, the only valid one.
Our imagination is bad at predicting the future. So if you have a model that can predict the future, it's more likely to correspond to reality than our imagination.
When you make the affirmation that our imagination is bad at predicting the future, how do you justify that belief?
Because we try to imagine things and it's wrong more often than it's right.
So is that justification based on predictive success?
No, it's based off our experience. It's just a fact of the matter.
So wait a second. So justification isn't just confined to the realm of predictive success.
Well, no, that's experience. We literally experience imagining things and then failing. So it's not a prediction. It's literally
okay. So I'm trying to basically
like we don't need to predict things to learn literally anything. We predict things to learn things about the external world. Conceptual truths about our mind and our experience do not need to have predictions to believe them. So if I say
obviously there's going to be a difference between I grant the difference between the demarcation between conceptual a priori justification and a posteriori justification. That's not what I'm saying, right? I'm saying that when I asked you for your metric for justification as a whole universally when it comes to your belief system,
I was using justification specifically for external things, not justification in general for all things. So justification for all possible things would be my model of epistemology, which is conceptual claims require conceptual evidence, empirical claims require empirical evidence, metaphysical claims require metaphysical evidence. That's like my universal
conceptual claims, like for example, A equals A.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically your justification or you could say your justificatory system acts in alignment with not only these conceptual claims, but these empirical observations plus novel testable predictions, correct?
Right. Novel testable predictions is only relevant to the empirical metaphysical part, not the conceptual part.
Okay. So if the novel testable predictions are basically going to be contingent on experiences regarding the empirical world, how does it extend to something which is metaphysical?
So novel testable predictions are anything that can predict the future has evidence. So if your hypothesis is there's a metaphysical being named Bob and you predict the future, that's evidence of metaphysics.
Okay, so you're saying that it is evidence. When you say evidence, what do you mean in this context by evidence?
Something that increases the probability of it being true.
Okay, so I like the argument as to why novel testable predictions raises the probability of metaphysical theories.
What was the question?
Yeah, what's the argument for the idea that novel testable predictions raises the probability of metaphysical theories?
Our ability to imagine things is bad and normally doesn't correspond to reality, which is metaphysics is reality. If it can predict the future, it's more likely to correspond to reality than our imagination.
Well, isn't that just based on induction?
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, so how do you argue that induction is probability raising?
Our ability to imagine things doesn't normally correspond to reality. So if something does more
Isn't
than
that
our
just like an
imagination,
inductive appeal though? Cause
that's
like,
fine. That's fine. Doesn't make a difference.
okay, so your argument for induction is induction, correct?
No, I'm not using induction to argue for induction. I'm using an experience, a fact of the reality, to then use to determine which of the things we're using is more likely to correspond to reality. So I'm not using induction.
So when I scrutinized your worldview, and I asked you how do you argue induction is more likely, you said
Well, no.
basically
I don't
our induction is probability
I
raising.
don't argue induction is more likely. Induction is a fact. There is a fact.
Induction is no.
Things happen at a certain rate. Some of them happen more. Some of them happen less. That's a fact.
Yeah, so I don't take induction to be a fact. I take it to be an epistemological methodology, which is different from a fact which describes the experimental world.
When I imagine things, lots of them don't happen, right? That's a fact.
Okay, so when you say the majority of things that we imagine tends to not be a fact.
Is it a fact or not that I have lots of imaginary things?
I guess.
Right. And so if I wanted to predict like what's going to happen next or whatever, my imagination is pretty bad at this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, but sometimes I can do it, very rarely. And there are certain models that do it a lot better than mine, my imagination, right? Like theory of gravity is much better at doing this than mine.
Yeah, so you're saying that your imagination has terrible predictive success, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a fact.
Yeah, so then I'm
not arguing.
Okay,
I'm not arguing that this justifies induction. I'm saying this is a fact. This happens.
Mm-hmm. So then, well, I was asking you a different question, but I mean, I grant that part definitely. Obviously, our imaginations are bad at predicting what is true of reality, or making So I'm basically saying that, like, if it is the case that you're
wait. So the question is, we both agree that our imagination is bad at doing this, and if we have something else that's good at doing this, is it more likely that that thing corresponds to reality than our imagination? That's the question.
Then just our imaginations, yeah, sure, but our imagination isn't the only thing we feel to genuinely.
That is the whole argument. It's literally it.
Yeah, but the thing is that the reason as to why the argument would land is because you're then basically excluding all the things that we appeal to outside of our imagination and predictions to justify claims.
If you have another method that can accurately tell us more information about reality and get it right than predictions, I'm happy to grant that. They've just never been demonstrated in reality.
Yeah, so I was just basically saying to you that the thing about the arguments is that while at face value it might appear to be convincing, the issue is that you have the proclivity to, I guess, assume in the background that the things that we appeal to for beliefs is either going to be our mere imaginations or it's going to be novel testable predictions. But I don't think our evidential appeal is as black and white and as you perceive it to be. I think
that's great.
there are other things that we appeal to.
If you have other things, and you can use them to give me more information in my model. So say you can use them to make better testable predictions and they work, then I'm happy to grant those, including the other information that they would entail. Now, because in my model, novel testable predictions is what works, and it's the only thing that works. That's the standard I'm going to go off of. And so you would need to beat my standard and do something better than what my standard could do in order to supplant that with something else. And so if you have some other model that
but the issue here is that I fail to see so I grant the novel testable predictions in some sense being epistemically useful. What I don't grant is whether this epistemically useful tool has any relevancy to, for example, the predictions, or rather not predictions, but the truthiness of metaphysical theories. Like how exactly were physicalist theories in any way relevant?
Because all of those things that you're talking about are your
of
imagination.
The world.
You haven't shown that any of your principles are any different than imagination. I have. Mine works. It shows it's now more than imagination. So everything starts at a level of imagination. Everything we imagine is imaginary by definition. And then we need some standard to move it above that. Is it more than imagination? Now I have a standard, novel testable predictions. This gives us a reason to believe that these things are more than our imagination. Now you would need another standard to show that your imaginary things are more than imaginary. And that's what you haven't provided. You just said, hey, here's all of my imaginary stuff, which I think is imaginary and it's really nice imaginary stuff. I don't care. I already have a standard that's beyond imagination. You don't.
Yeah, so the issue here is this, right? So when you say principles, are you referring to like our conceptual truths, or like things that we accept to be true in our conceptual, you could say,
I'm
landscape?
arguing specifically about the things that you think that we should be including beyond testable predictions to try to determine what's true about reality. Those things specifically. I don't know what those are, the virtue stuff, explanatory power stuff.
Mhm.
Those things are the ones I'm
Mhm.
specifically referring to when I'm talking about your imaginary
Okay.
stuff.
Okay, so hold on there a second. So when we talk about things like, for example, the laws of logic, would you think that like that is something which is relevant to epistemology?
Yeah, it's just conceptual. It's conceptual truth. So it doesn't tell us anything about the fundamental nature of reality. It's just conceptual.
Okay, so it seems to be the case that, well, I mean, we've already established that your justification or your justificator system isn't just confined to novel testable predictions.
Well,
It's just something that you utilize for metaphysical
specifically
theories.
for things beyond our imagination. So
Mhm.
novel testable predictions is for things beyond our imagination. Things in our imagination,
Okay.
physical evidence is perfectly fine. So I've already
Yeah, and I'm saying that, yeah, so what is in question is basically, for one, how is it the case that physicalist models predicts the future if it is not about the empirical world?
what it is. It's novel testable predictions about the empirical world. What are you talking about?
No, physicalist models aren't just about it's aren't about empirical facts. It's about the metaphysical facts of the matter, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Which is
That's
different.
both of those things are things beyond our imagination. So testable predictions apply to both empirical and metaphysical, both of which are outside of our imagination.
Wait, so let's just break this down real quick, and I want you to keep up with me, okay? So if it is a case that physicalist models are something which has a frame of reference, and the frame of reference is something which is a metaphysical state of affair,
Sure.
and novel testable predictions are things with respect to the empirical world, so the frame of reference is the empirical world or the empirical state of affair. How do you make the coextension between the metaphysical state of affair and the empirical state of affair in such a way whereas one has to be relevant to the other?
None of that matters. So like there's two things. There's our imagination and things outside of our imagination. There's you don't start with metaphysics, you don't start with empirical, all that's gibberish. There's imagination and things outside of our imagination. The category of things outside of our imagination includes all of metaphysics, all of the empirical world. The things in our imagination is the conceptual stuff, the stuff that we language, logic, math, blah, 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 stuff in our imagination. So if we want to go from the imaginary side to the beyond imaginary side, we need a principle, and that principle is novel testable predictions. So anything on the empirical metaphysical side is both justified by novel testable predictions. Metaphysics is the fundamental nature of reality.
So basically, I think that you're missing one thing, and I'll just exemplify it with this theory, this analogy, pretty much. So let's say, for example, like you're a transcendental realist, you believe that space-time is something is just extramental.
What?
And I'm like a transcendental idealist, right? So both of us like grant that we have empirical observations and there's certain empirical facts, like for example, causality exists, all of that bullcrap, right? Now, if we grant these facts, these empirical facts about the phenomenal world, right? How do these empirical facts, lead us to the metaphysical fact of the matter, which is whether transcendental realism is true or transcendental idealism is true?
If I have a
How do you make that
hypothesis,
extrapolation?
physicalism is true, and that hypothesis makes predictions, that is evidence physicalism is true, period. It's very simple. It doesn't need to entail with 100% certainty.
Basically, I'm saying to you that let's just entertain. Okay, so could I just make a response real quick?
Sure.
Okay, sure. So I was just going to say, well, in the analogy I've given specifically, right, we have these metaphysical theories, right? You're like a realist, I'm like an idealist, right? But we grant all the empirical facts that we're talking. We grant the novel testable predictions. We grant all of these empirical facts, right, that exist within the empirical world.
Okay.
All we don't grant is whether the empirical world is extramental or it's just a mere mental entity, right?
Okay.
So how do you hash out the metaphysical fact of the matter, which is whether it is extramental or mental, in virtue of the observations within this potentially mental extramental world?
I've already answered this 50 times. Whichever model makes predictions and gets them right is the one that has the evidence. Physicalists make the model that makes predictions and gets them right. Idealists don't. That's the answer. We have evidence, you don't. That's simple.
So I'll just make my response explicit instead of like dancing around the bush and asking you these questions. My explicit response to this is that basically the novel testable prediction arguments would work if they share the same frame of reference. So the physicalist model has no regard. The physicalist model has no regard into the empirical state of affairs rule.
Literally irrelevant. Again, you can make whatever frame of reference you want. If it makes predictions, it works. Ours do, yours don't. That's that simple. Done. Over. Game over. You lose.
Yeah. So I'll just say it like this, right? So if it is a case that the justification that we use for, like, let's say these metaphysical theories,
make predictions or don't go home.
Yeah, but the prediction that you're talking about it assumes in the background that the frame of reference is analogous, but it is not.
Nope, it does not assume that at all. The only entailments here are that we have an imagination. Our imagination is bad at predicting the future. If we have something that's good at predicting the future, then it's more likely that that thing corresponds to the thing outside our imagination. That's it.
So let's get it. So let's get this clear, right? Let's say, for example, I'm like, for example, let's say I believe that it is true that there's a being named Bob which exists outside of space time, right? As you may say, right? And I think because of the fact that there's it could say a platonic world or a non-spatial temporal world, it is the case that like you could say, I'm going to eat a chicken in the next hour. Let's say this occur, for example. If the metaphysical theory I have has no relevancy to whether I will eat chicken or whatever, right? Then obviously it's going to be a red herring to whether, or to the justificative process of whether I'll eat the chicken in the next hour. So the prediction success would be irrelevant.
Wrong. So first of all, chicken isn't a novel prediction. So eating chicken is not a novel prediction. If you predicted something novel that we didn't know yet about the universe and got it right, that would be evidence of Bob. No entailment required. Does not matter if it was required that Bob exists to explain this thing. If it was novel, it would be
okay. Let me just entertain your argument then. So you're saying that in the case where you have Bob the Creator, right, and assuming that Bob the Creator exists outside of the space-time dimension, leads to, like, let's say, for example, we never knew. Let's say up to this point in time,
Goldbrick
you don't know whether
in front of us.
Yeah. Let me just like give my argument real quick. I'm just gonna say that let's say, for example, both me and you never knew up until now, or up until the next 3 seconds, that gravity exists, or there's something which pulls objects towards it.
Appears in front of us. This is a perfect example. If you predict,
okay, let's use the gold brick example. Okay, so with the gold brick example, let's say that we didn't know this, right? And I just assumed that because of the fact that Bob the Creator exists, or there's some platonic world which exists beyond our sensory faculties. Let's say, assuming this, I say that because this is the case, the gold brick will appear in the next 3 seconds, correct?
Yep.
And this thing does in fact occur.
That is evidence. So you have evidence of your platonic Bob.
Yeah, let me just finish my arguments real quick, my response, okay? So I'm saying that if it is a case that, assuming this, I say that because this is the case, this thing follows. But we know that, for one, assuming that there's a platonic world, or that there's this immaterial entity which is called Bob, has no relevancy to whether something within the material world exists or will exist.
I don't care.
How do you make the connection?
Nothing you said matters there. Nothing you said. If you have a hypothesis, Bob will create a gold brick appears, you have evidence of Bob. All this entailment bullshit does not make a difference. We don't care. That's underdetermination. Underdetermination is a problem solved in physics. We don't have a problem with it. We don't care.
Wait, so you agree that the argument or the evidence is logically invalid, correct?
No, it is perfectly valid. It doesn't need to be entailed.
Wait, so if it is logically valid, then how does it follow from that?
So I've already addressed all of your bullshit nonsense. You're just talking about the problem of underdetermination. It's been solved. If you make predictions, that's evidence. Problem over. There's nothing else. Your argument's done. Your entire argument for the past several hours has been underdetermination, which I have addressed in the same way 1,000,000 times. Predictions, you have evidence, you're done. Doesn't need to be entailed, doesn't need to be exclusive. Garbage. All that's garbage nonsense that some idealists talk about because they're too dumb to actually make predictions. Go make predictions. Anybody else got any questions? Banana, do you got anything else? While we wait for more hands. I cannot hear you. I'm going to refresh. All right, I can hear you now.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right, cool. So why is the creation of new life not immoral?
Because if you're not imposing on its will, it's not immoral. Creating new life isn't an imposition on will because the thing you created didn't have a will before you created it.
What if you know that its will be imposed upon once it is created? Would that be moral?
Then you didn't do the immorality. Whatever imposed on it did the immorality.
What if you know that you will be the one to impose upon it?
Well, you creating it wouldn't be immoral, but you imposing on it after you created it would be immoral.
But if it's necessary that by creating it, you will necessarily impose upon its will.
Then again, you creating it isn't immoral, but you doing the next thing is. I mean, I'm not a necessitarian, so that would be a necessitarian question again.
I guess. All right, that's funny. All right. Also, you said morality is like a law of physics.
Yep.
Okay. All right. It would would gravity be like a law of physics or something like that?
Sure, but not the moral law. So there's multiple laws of physics. Moral law would be a different law of physics.
Yeah, of course. It's like a different law of physics. But it's like in a world where morality is the dominant law of physics, then you have, best of all possible worlds.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the universe where like gravity is the dominant law of physics? What would that look like, do you think?
Black hole singularity.
Okay, what would I don't know. I don't know. Like I don't know. What about I don't know, speed of light. What if that was the dominant law of physics? What do you think that would look like?
What? How is the speed of light is a measurement?
Is that not a law? I
It's
don't
a
know.
vector.
Maybe
It's a
I'm
vector. So it's
vector. Okay. What
it's
about
like the speed things travel. So it is like one of the dominant laws, but it's
strong
still
force?
the
What if
strong
force? What if like that was the strongest dominant? Was the most dominant force?
Same thing. Big black hole singularity.
What about weak force?
Same thing. Big black hole singularity.
Would it actually?
Yeah. So like the weak force is the thing that holds protons and neutrons together. So if you increased the power of the weak force and its scope, then it would just crush everything together, just like gravity would.
Okay. Well, what if so? Didn't you say like at the beginning of the universe that gravity was repellent?
Yep.
But what if it was repellent, maximally repellent? It's the most dominant force.
Be nothing but electrons, probably.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm just asking silly questions at this point. I don't know, actually. I just think it's fun. No, I don't have anything like serious right now.
Gotcha. Vindaloo raised his hand to see if he got anything. He's not coming up. All right, anybody else in the audience have any questions? God, philosophy, morality, stuff.
Hey, long time follower, Tejum. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Nice. Yeah, it's going well. What about you?
All right. Starting my atheist church.
Yeah,
Give me
like
money. Give me money. Please, money.
Yeah, okay. I'll sure. I want to know, like, I saw you quoting the Bhagavad Gita, like, as in, like, I'm not a Hindu, but I was, like, raised in a Hindu family. What do you think with Hinduism? Like, do you think it's, like, worse than Christianity or
No.
because
So the way I judge religions is by the moral teachings in the texts. So I think that the Bhagavad Gita is probably more comparable to something like Norse mythology. Like it's much more poetry, so it's harder to understand what's actually going on.
problem?
But I probably wouldn't put it as immoral as Christianity or Islam or the Abrahamic religions, because literally God drowned the planet. That's a harsh one.
The problem with Hinduism, like, no one cares about the Bhagavad Gita or the scriptures. Like, it's not a scriptural religion. Like,
Sure.
in my call, where I
Why is
come
that
from,
a
people still
problem?
have animal sacrifices. Animal sacrifices. They have
Why is that a
all
problem?
kinds of.
Why is it a problem that they don't care what the text says? Like, I don't think that's a problem. Like, I wish more
There's a
Christians
problem.
didn't care what
There's
the
no
text says.
structure.
Yeah, I don't care. Why would that matter?
Because lately there's a problem. Like, they've been listening to all these, like, prophets, and that's a bad thing, right?
Christians
Since
do
there's
that
no
too.
structure,
I don't think that
at least have the Bible to quote it, right? They, like, interpret the Bible, like, hey, this is where then this verse was this, so you're wrong about it. Like,
Well,
you don't
Joseph
think?
Smith said he spoke to an angel with some gold plates. Like, Christians do that
Oh, yeah.
too. I don't think it really makes a difference whether or not you interpret the text as authoritative. I don't care. What I care about is, what does your religious belief tends to have an impact on society, make it more moral or less moral, or if the text itself
given a
is
choice,
immoral.
like, which religion?
Jainism.
Given a choice, like, Jainism?
Yep. Jainism is the most moral as far as I know.
But I like my onions and garlic.
I like cows, so I understand that it would be less fun, but it would be more moral.
Yeah, I like them. My friends Jain, but they're less on scripture and more on, like, peacefulness and, like, avoiding harm and
Yeah.
unnecessary harm. I like them, but I like my onions and garlic.
Right. I'm not going to pick a religion because it's fun. If there was a religion, I'd pick it because it was moral. But I like fun more, so I'm not going to join a religion.
Okay. Okay. I gotta go. It was nice talking to you.
Yep.
Have a nice day.
You too. Prometheus, what's up? Let's see if I can hear you. I can't hear you. I'm going to refresh.
Maybe Snow Banana? Just wanted to...
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right.
All right.
Yeah, it's my end. I have to refresh every time somebody new comes in because Discord is dumb.
Hello?
Yep, I can hear you. Go ahead. Prometheus, can you hear me? Apparently not.
Discord is awesome.
Discord is
Is he
awesome.
speaking for you right now? T-Jump?
Yes, I am. You have to refresh now. Message. Yes.
Hello?
Damn it. Politics.
I'm going to leave and come back just to test this out.
That's a good idea. Can you hear me now?
Hello. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, yeah.
You're good. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to ask you a question regarding like your conceptions of morality.
Sure.
Like, so you consider morality objective?
Yep.
In the form of like similar like laws of physics, correct?
Yep.
And like, would you define objective like as independent of minds?
Yes. Well, exists independent of any subjective mind. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. And just to be clear, your definition of objective morality, you define something as immoral when it's like an involuntary imposition on someone's will, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So as you can tell, I'm a fan. So I guess the problem that I have with that is that doesn't that in and of itself seem to be contradictory?
No, because I know what you're saying. It's a common question.
Yeah.
The principle that involuntary imposition of will is wrong can be objective and can be true independent of the fact it pertains to wills. The fact that it pertains to wills doesn't make it subjective. What would make it subjective is if it was only true because minds deemed it such. That's what would make it subjective. If it's true because of a law of physics or because of a Platonic object or because of something that exists independent of minds, even if the law pertains to minds, it would still be an objective law.
Okay, sure. So I guess the second question is, how have you defined like that this particular thing is immoral? Have you just like defined it that way?
No.
Or
so I was looking at the
decided...
evidence of moral intuition and moral progress, looking at the philosophical dilemmas and the problems of philosophy and ethical philosophers. And when trying to solve these problems and looking at the patterns of moral intuition and moral progress, I inferred from those patterns what they would lead to given their extreme, and then tried to describe that with a principle. This is the principle I came to. And I make predictions that I think that if we discover further in the future, we'll get closer to this principle. And if we discover other species, they will be closer to this principle wherever we go in the universe. So that's how looking at positions in moral intuition and progress.
Wouldn't this just
go ahead?
Yeah, but wouldn't this just be like a sort of descriptive sociological phenomenon that you observe that like we as human monkeys, right? We're consistently arcing toward this particular moral principle, but that wouldn't necessarily make it like objective in the sense objective in the sense that there's something like objectively good about this. It could simply be a result of us being, evolutionary organisms which are oriented toward this particular action.
Right. So that would be, if we look at past data, there's infinitely many ways to explain the past data. Evolution is one of them. That's why I make novel predictions about future things we will find, like where we will continue to move towards this more principle, and we will discover other like aliens, AI will also discover this principle. That's the predictions that is unique to my model, that if it's true would be exclusive evidence of my model, not evolution.
But I don't fully understand, because what I was saying was that okay, wait, so how are you coming to this determination, like this assumption that like other like alien species would also similarly have this sort of similar moral principle that they're arcing toward? And two, even if they did, how is that evidence of this being objective rather than some feature of the universe?
So if my model is correct and there is a universal law of morality that affects all conscious agents in the universe, then all conscious agents would follow this moral pattern. And so if we found other conscious agents, they would also follow this moral pattern. That would be a prediction entailed by my model, that if there is a universal model, we would expect this. If there was not, we would not expect this. So the reason this is evidence is because it's a novel prediction, and novel predictions, if they are correct, is evidence of whatever hypothesis that makes them.
Well, okay, but here's the problem that I'm having. So let's just assume that what you said is correct, that like you are engaging in this sort of novel prediction, and that there are aliens which fall under that. That doesn't actually indicate that this is some sort of form of objective morality. All it indicates is there's some sort of universal constant within conscious beings, right, which are oriented toward this form of action.
No, you're bringing up the problem of underdetermination again. Like, any piece of evidence can be explained by infinitely many hypotheses, like, but it doesn't make a difference. Whichever one makes the prediction first gets the evidence. So if I make a prediction that is not currently expected by the other hypotheses, and my prediction comes true, that's evidence of whatever hypothesis I want. Magical pixies, whatever.
I don't think it's a problem of underdetermination. I think it's a problem of this particular, like you make a prediction and it comes to this particular conclusion, but that conclusion doesn't indicate objective morality. All it indicates is
that's underdetermination.
Phenomenon.
That's literally the problem of underdetermination. So underdetermination is the fact that any piece of data that you find could be explained by infinitely many hypotheses. Like, for example, we could all be in the Matrix. Whatever predictions, like the sun, perihelion of Mercury, speed of light, that can all be explained by the fact we're in the Matrix. And so it could all be wrong. Like, maybe the world is flat. So even though we discover and we build satellites and we can literally see the world's round, well, it can still be flat. So is that really evidence? The fact that we go out and see the planet and we look at it's round, is that evidence it's round? Because it could still be flat? Yeah, it's still evidence it's round. So if a model makes predictions that we will see something under some tested hypothesis and it works, that's evidence of the hypothesis, even though the same data could be explained by alternative hypotheses. Doesn't make a difference.
It's not about whether or not it could be explained by alternative hypotheses. It's about whether or not this sort of like line of reasoning actually leads to the conclusion. I don't think it does.
That's the same thing. Those two statements are literally the same thing. Does this line of evidence exclusionarily lead to this particular conclusion? Never. It is logically not possible for that to happen. It can never, ever do that. There are always infinitely many hypotheses that can explain all of the data. The data will never exclusionarily indicate one hypothesis or even one kind of hypothesis. That will never happen. That cannot happen. Evidence doesn't work that way.
Okay, that's not what I'm saying, but
I
guess what we're kind of I don't think it is.
Like, what you're saying is this evidence that if aliens did have this alternative or the same pattern of morality, well, that could be explained by social phenomenon, not morality, right? That's the argument.
Well, okay, yeah, sure.
So you're saying there is an alternative hypothesis that can also explain this data. Therefore, this data does not exclusionarily indicate hypothesis A over hypothesis B. Is that right?
Okay, yeah, I follow what you're saying.
That's literally the problem of underdetermination. It's literally the problem of underdetermination. Verbatim.
Cool. So why do you fall on the side of that there's some sort of a moral objective force? Why does that like line of evidence sort of follow toward that being objective?
Because prediction. So if a model makes novel testable predictions and it gets it right, that's evidence of that model over all of the other models that could explain the data.
Okay, but I'll just fine. I'll do a similar novel prediction.
Sure.
That if we have a alien race that arrives, their form of morality will be also as a result of or bending toward the principle of being opposed to involuntary impositions on one's will, and that's because of common sort of sociological systems in place.
Well, you'd have to make a different prediction. So if I already made a prediction and you're copying my prediction, that's called post hoc reasoning. So what you need to do is say,
I drew a distinction.
What?
Right?
You did?
I'm saying that it's not because of
no. That you have to. The thing you're predicting has to be different. Explaining the reason why it's different is irrelevant. That's a different hypothesis. The thing you're predicting has to be different. So if I made a prediction about aliens having a negative view of involuntary position of will, you would need to predict something different than that. Say aliens will actually have that, and I don't know, like apples or something. And the reason they do both is because of sociological adaptation or something. And so if you predict something different and get it right, that would be equivalent evidence of both, because they both made predictions, they both got it right, and they're both independent. Picking the same prediction is called post hoc reasoning. So you can't pick the same prediction; you have to predict a different novel prediction.
Wait, it's not post hoc. Wait, why would it be post hoc reasoning?
Because novel means predicting something that hasn't already been predicted by somebody else.
Yeah, wait, but if if two different people, they both predict that the Earth is round.
Yeah.
But one does that. But one person does that because Zeus has indicated it, and the other one engages in some sort of like a mathematical analysis of the length of shadows.
Yep.
The reasoning behind those particular things are absolutely relevant.
It doesn't matter. They both have evidence. So if they both independently come to the conclusion the world is round, one is because Zeus told them so, and one is because math. And then they both make a prediction of, I don't know, the Archimedes towers or whatever, and they confirm it.
By the way, could you repeat that last statement?
What?
I disconnected, like the last sentence. Sorry.
Yeah. So if there's two people, two sides of the planet never spoke to one another, they both make a prediction the world is round. One is because Zeus told him so, and the other is because of math. And they both make a prediction that if you do the Archimedes experiment or the one with the wells and the towers or whatever,
shadow, yeah,
and they both got it right, they would both have evidence of their models. Now, if one of them made a prediction that Zeus did it, and then the other guy said, "Wait a minute, no, I'm going to make that exact same prediction," and then make up a different reason, that would be post hoc reasoning, and so it would only be evidence of Zeus.
Yeah, no, that doesn't follow at all.
Yes, it does. I'm not sure what you.
No, like because someone can come up with similar conclusion while having different reasoning,
right.
And it's a question of whether which particular reasoning has more cohesive evidence or sort of indication for it.
Nope.
And I think that
completely relevant. Completely relevant. So, like, let's say that we have a model that has. Well, let's show the difference here. If we have a model that makes perfectly cohesive rationing, whatever, but no novel predictions, it's garbage. It's a complete waste of time. If we have a completely gibberish, random model that we don't understand at all, but it makes predictions, that one's right. And so what matters isn't the cohesion or the intelligibility of the model. We don't care about that at all. That'll come in after the fact. Like if there's two models and they both do it, you can prefer the one that's cohesive and understanding for that reason. And that you could.
But that's what I'm saying between our two predictions. Sure. I'm saying that my prediction is more cohesive.
No, but they have to both be made independently of one another. You can't take my prediction, then adopt it into your worldview and try to make a more cohesive
why
logic.
Not? Like,
because it's post hoc reasoning. It's literally post hoc reasoning. It's not relevant.
No, it's not.
It's literally what it is.
It's not though. I look at
if you take my prediction and then you copy it and make a different explanation, that's literally post hoc reasoning. You can't do that. You're not allowed to take my prediction and copy it. No, you have to make a different prediction. It's literally not novel if you take my prediction and copy it. Literally makes it not novel. The opposite of novel.
I look. I don't care about like whether or not it's a novel. I looked at the your description.
Evidence is a novel testable prediction. So if it's not a novel testable prediction, it's not evidence. And so if you just have a testable prediction that you copied from some other hypothesis, it's not evidence of your hypothesis.
But this is ridiculous because in scientific experiments, individuals they take particular predictions that were made with others, and then they either test it right or they give alternative explanations. And it's a question of which particular worldview is more cohesive with reality.
Absolutely nobody cares about that. What we care about is which ones make new novel predictions. That one wins.
Wait, you're saying that? So if I just make a new novel prediction, and it happens to be right, just like
that would be evidence.
That's better.
That would be evidence. Yep.
Oh no, okay. So I disagree. I think that like you need to have a sort of obviously you need to make predictions, but the sort of if you have two particular predictions and one has a more cohesive, intelligible, reflective of reality,
it essentially never happens that two different hypotheses make the same prediction. It just doesn't happen.
I just gave you an example of it.
It doesn't happen. In reality, it just doesn't happen. There's no case where people, I think maybe there's one case where people came up with similar predictions from two different hypotheses. It was Feynman and Schrodinger, I think. And so it doesn't make a difference at all. We don't care about any of that garbage. None of it. Whichever one makes testable predictions gets it right wins every time. And it's pretty much always one. Only one that does that.
Wait, so
like quantum mechanics makes no sense. We don't understand it. Makes no sense. We don't care. It wins.
Wait, could you repeat that part? You kind of broke up.
Quantum mechanics makes no sense. Particle duality, entanglement, we think it's gibberish. It's logically very confusing. No one understands it. It works. It wins. We don't care if it makes sense.
Well, I mean, obviously we do, but like
we do not. We literally do not. Literally, there are tons and tons of quantum physicists who literally say reality is not obligated to make sense to you. We do not care if it makes sense. Making sense is something that a bunch of dumb philosophers
There's a
think.
distinction. When they say that, what they're saying is that, hey, just because you don't understand it doesn't mean that this isn't like the case in reality.
Right.
Right.
But they don't understand it. They literally don't understand it, and we don't care.
But that's irrelevant. But that's irrelevant to the question of whether or not, like, in the future, as we continue to study these, we'll be able to make it intelligible.
Right. But if you were able to make it intelligible with some alternative hypothesis, that alternative hypothesis will still be nothing until it makes novel predictions.
Wait, but okay, sure, you can make novel predictions, but the fact that that novel prediction turns out to be... I broke up again. I don't know why my internet's messed up. So you can make novel predictions, but people make novel predictions all the time.
Yep.
And that doesn't make it like particularly relevant or important.
Yes, it is. So it's literally evidence. Like, obviously, it's possible to get some correct by chance, which is why you have to do it at a higher rate than chance. But yes, novel predictions are evidence. Your intelligibility does not matter at all. We do not care if you say there's a round square on Venus who poops potatoes, and you could predict the lottery numbers 50 times in a row. That's evidence of a round square on Venus that poops potatoes.
Okay. That doesn't seem particularly right to me.
I know it doesn't. You're just wrong. Like, evidence is just novel predictions. If you can make novel predictions and understand reality, when you have evidence, we can't. You do. You have evidence.
In my opinion, yeah. Okay, but the problem is that, like, you have two particular individuals, and they both make a prediction.
That just doesn't happen. That's just not a realistic example. It just doesn't happen.
But it literally does. I just gave you an example.
No, you being able to imagine a thing doesn't mean it actually happens in reality ever.
Are you really telling me that there have never been scientists who come together with similar predictions, right? And they were, for example, like, let's say a spherical Earth, right? Similar predictions, but they had completely different lines of reasoning for why they believed that thing, and they both turned out to be right regarding spherical Earth?
Like, never. That almost never happens. I know of one example.
Okay, so if I provided you examples, right?
Well, I know of one example. I know of one example of this happening, which means both models are justified. Both models have evidence. Yeah. So if you make testable predictions, both independently make testable predictions, and they are both correct, both models are justified to believe are true.
Okay.
You can subjectively say, I like this model better because it's more parsimonious or whatever, but both models are equally justified. You can pick whichever one. They're both justified. They both have evidence.
I think that this line of reasoning or this line of thinking it lacks an extreme amount of rigor, because it allows for you to essentially believe anything if somebody ever makes a novel prediction that later on it turns out to be right.
No, I think if that it happens at a higher rate than chance, yes. But that's like
what do you mean by higher rate?
Well, like, you can, like, literally guess things, and 1 out of every 1,000,000 guesses might be right, but that's just chance. So for it to be evidence, it usually has to be consistent, reliable, repeatable. Like, if you can predict Bob makes a gold brick every time you pray you get a gold brick, that's evidence of Bob. And so if you can, so your argument was that this methodology allows you to believe potentially anything, but a methodology that doesn't is literally wrong, because to understand reality, you have to be open to believing whatever reality happens to be like, not a priori exclude things you don't like. So any good model is going to allow you to believe literally anything based on whatever evidence it provides. That's literally how evidence has to work for it to be not biased.
Wait, but it's not talking about excluding evidence if it doesn't cohere with pre-existing beliefs. It's talking about having a more rigorous system in place.
No, yours isn't more rigorous. Yours is literally a failed epistemology. So, like, you can't exclude possibilities simply because you don't like them or because conceptually they don't make sense to you. So if there's a model like round squares that create farting leprechauns on Venus, and that explains something and makes testable predictions and a ton of them, that's justified to believe, even if you don't like it, even if it doesn't make sense to you. Even if
it's not an actual explanation. It's just a claim that is being made.
But if that claim allows people to predict the future and get it right, that claim wins. It's better than any claim you've ever made. Anything that makes sense to you, it's better than all of that. because it predicts the future. Whether it makes sense or not makes no difference.
My system not only relies upon that sort of testifiability, but also relies upon having a sort of reliable structure in place.
Right, and that's the part that we know is methodologically wrong. Quantum mechanics has proved that methodologically wrong. We don't care.
No.
If it makes predictions, it wins. It doesn't matter if it makes sense to you. If the Bible literally had the world was 4.5 billion years old, the universe is 13.8 billion years old, DNA is a double helix, doesn't matter. That would all be evidence of Christianity. We'd all be Christians. Doesn't matter how stupid Christianity is. Doesn't matter if the flood world stuff makes no sense. Doesn't matter if this covers physics.
Example.
If that predicts the future, it wins.
So this actually is a good example because I've had conversations with theists, right, with Christians, and quite often they refer to specific verses within the Bible, for example, which quote unquote predict things that would happen.
Yep, you cut out again.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I've had conversations with people who've read the Bible who predict things which happen thousands of years later. Yep. And I would always respond to them, hey, just because they wrote something which later on came true is not actual evidence that this is a sort of prophetic thing.
Your epistemology is wrong. Your epistemology is broken. Like anyone competent in philosophy, competent in science, is like, yeah, that's evidence. That is correct evidence.
Really?
If it's true. So obviously we probably think it's probably wrong, but if it actually happened, yeah, that'd be genuine evidence for sure.
Okay. Well, I would agree with you that it's, if you're engaging in a sort of Bayesian analysis, right, that would start to tilt things in one way, except for the fact that it would start to tilt things one way, except for the fact that you don't actually know which way it tilts because, as you mentioned previously,
that's the problem of underdetermination. We don't care about that.
Exactly. So what I asked you is, why do you jump into one particular bin instead of the other?
Whichever one is able to predict it first is most likely to be correct.
Wait, why? Like if
because it's really, really hard to predict the future, but it's really, really easy to take other people's predictions and make up a new explanation for it.
T-Jump, are you saying that if I predicted, if I was the one who made the prediction first, earlier than you,
yep,
right, that all of a sudden mine was better?
Yes. If you have a model that can predict, as long as I didn't know about it, so or I did know about it, so if you made a prediction that X will happen, and I learn about your prediction and make up a new explanation, yours is better. Yours wins every time. If we came up with the hypothesis independently of one another, then they would both be equally evidence. But yeah, if you made a prediction and I learned about it from you, then made up an alternative, yours is better.
Cool. So what if how old are you, by the way, T-Jump?
34.
But when was it that you made this initial prediction?
No idea.
No idea? Sheesh. Okay. Well, I don't know. Maybe we can sort of disagree.
Yeah, if we found a old Hindu text or something that made the same prediction, then that would be better than mine.
Okay. I will have to agree to disagree there. I personally think that whoever made it's irrelevant. Whoever made that particular prediction first. It's more of a question of which A, whether or not they made a prediction which was later proven right, and B, if they made that prediction, how do you judge between them? It's not whether or not which one made it first, but rather whose system of producing that particular prediction was more in line with reality.
Well, we know that's wrong. So we know that's wrong because it's always possible to take a prediction and then explain it in a more simple way, more parsimonious way, but we don't care. We literally don't care. The fact that you can take successful predictions and explain them in a new way makes no difference. We don't care.
Okay.
But there's infinitely, we could infinitely make simpler ways to explain well, it's we do this. We do this in physics all the time. String theory.
Who's first?
What? Yeah, it is who first.
If we don't care, if we don't care about if we don't care about being parsimonious, if we don't care about which is more coherent with all the reality that we have, which is basically the evidence that we have.
No, that's the novel.
Why do we care? Why do we care about who's first?
Because it's hard to get things right. So why is it that Einstein is currently the most correct in physics? Because he was the first to predict the perihelion of Mercury and the testable predictions that he made. Now, all the models today can predict them. String theory, many worlds hypothesis, EPR, de Broglie pilot wave, they all make the same predictions as Einstein. Why don't we accept them over Einstein? Because he was first. You got it right. These are all just taking the information we already have and post hoc explaining them. We don't care about any of that garbage. Does it explain it simpler? Yes, it's simpler. It's more coherent. It's more understandable with modern physics. Are they more superlative than Einstein? Nope, they lose to Einstein. Until they make novel predictions, they lose.
Wait, no, but that's just a function of like the way that fame works.
Well, it's not
a function
fame.
of
It's not fame. It's about the methodology of science. Newton was correct because he was first, and then Einstein replaced Newton. Einstein was considered wrong until he made novel predictions about the curvature of light around the sun to replace Newton. It's the novel predictions.
It's not about like who's, dude. Like, come on, man. You don't actually believe it.
Yes,
if I made that,
it's literally a fact.
If I made the same prediction as you, but literally 1 minute before, you would say mine is more right. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, if I copied it, yeah, definitely. So like again,
Okay,
this,
you know
this
what?
is very,
It's
very
fine.
easy to prove. If the Bible said the DNA is a double helix, the world is 4.5 billion years old, the universe is 13.8, would that be evidence of Christianity? Any rational epistemology is going to say, yep.
Cool. So we'll just agree to disagree here because I have other questions in the same vein. But if you want, we can stop talking. I don't want to take too much of your time.
That's fine. I don't know if anybody else has their hand up right now.
Yeah, I just don't want to take too much of their time. You know, I know other people want to talk.
Sure, go for it. Ask a question.
Okay, cool. So let's just, I just wanted to dive into like, what exactly do you mean by an involuntary imposition? Exactly. Like what constitutes
I
an
don't
involuntary
want to
imposition?
do that. You force me to do that.
Sorry, say it again?
Forcing people to do things they don't consent to doing.
Oh, shoot. I thought you were talking to me when you were saying I don't want to define involuntary imposition.
Oh, no.
My bad. I was like, wait, what? Okay, sorry. Repeat that again because I was so surprised by that. Yeah.
Forcing people to do things they don't consent to doing.
Does that mean active consent?
Depends. So like my definition of consent is that if you were an all-knowing being and put all actions on a list of things you would do, things you wouldn't do, the things on the list of you wouldn't do are involuntary.
Okay, so like even if you haven't said it out loud, if you have this like, sort of mental list of things, then that's wrong, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So just to be clear, if you have if somebody throws a surprise birthday party, that wouldn't be immoral because maybe in your sort of mental list you don't have like a surprise birthday party as something that you would be against.
Unless it's on your list of things you don't voluntarily consent to, then it wouldn't be immoral.
Okay, cool. So what do you call it? Suppose that in my mental list, I have a situation where I don't like paying for I don't know
Taxes?
lasagnas. Focus on lasagnas, right? I go and I eat it, and then somebody says, "Hey, you have to pay for it." Is it immoral for them to sort of force me to pay for that lasagna?
Sort of. So like if you're in a world that if you consent to eat something, you have to pay for it, and you consent to eat something under the condition you have to pay for it, then no, it would not be immoral. If you're in a world where that condition is not met, then it would be immoral to force you to pay for it.
Wait, but like, are you saying that the sort of world that I'm in dictates and sort of forces me? Because
yes, we're in a world of gravity. It forces you to, yes, like the world you're in has certain rules to it, and if you consent to those rules, then you're consenting to be under those rules, and if you don't consent to them, then they're immoral.
What do you think about implied consent laws?
I don't know what that means.
I'm sorry, what did he say?
Implied consent laws. If you're drinking and driving, it's police consider you to have implicitly consented to breathalyzer test or blood test.
I think those are all pragmatic things. Yeah, I think it's immoral. Like most laws of like kind are immoral objectively. They're pragmatic, but immoral objectively.
Even though they say that you consented to it implicitly.
Yeah, you did not consent. I did not consent to giving you a breathalyzer test, even if I drank and drive. No, that's immoral.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but that is the rules within the world that like that you
pragmatic.
find yourself.
Yeah, it's pragmatic.
That is, I don't know, but that is a sort of moral rules that like have been like imposed like by the world, like gravity,
those
right?
Are not
that
moral
like once you
rules,
drive,
those are legal rules.
That is. Wait, but like wait. I don't follow.
Legal
in the
rules
same way,
aren't moral.
in the same way that. No. When I say I don't follow, I see extreme similarities between the what I just described, which is that, hey, it's against my internal moral code to pay for lasagna, and your response was, well, like by engaging in this particular action, which is
I
choosing to,
think I understand what you're saying. So, like in the best of all possible worlds, everybody gets their own entire planet, entire universe to sign whatever rules they want in that universe. All the actions of the list that do not consent. So, if somebody else has their own universe and their own restaurant, Bob's Restaurant, and you want to eat at Bob's Restaurant, then you need to go to his world and consent to his rules, which may entail you must pay for lasagna. Now, if you don't want to consent to those rules, you don't have to go. So you can make
Like,
your own
what
lasagna in your own universe.
Okay, so that, but we don't live in that sort of universe, right?
What does
Like,
that
we
have to
live in
do
it-
with
we-
anything? Like whether we live there doesn't make a difference. This is a definition of objective morality. Whether or not it's applied in our pragmatic
I'm sorry,
subjective
you're breaking up
standard
for
is
me.
irrelevant.
Could you repeat that statement?
So whether or not we live in a perfectly objectively perfect world is irrelevant to the definition of what objective morality would be. Our pragmatic, by definition, subjective limitations have no bearing on what is objectively moral. And so objectively moral would be no involuntary imposition of will. You can't force anyone to do anything they don't consent to doing. Obviously, we don't live in such a world, which means we have to do lots of immoral things all the time. But that doesn't have any bearing on what's objectively morally true.
Okay, so because we live in this sort of world, we sometimes engage in like immoral actions.
Sure, like taxes,
some
stoplights.
sort of- yes, like some sort of for pragmatic considerations.
Yes.
Okay. So would you say that consent? Okay. Okay, interesting. I was going to give you a different analogy, but I feel like that wouldn't fall under that. If you're going to accept that it's immoral, then that just wouldn't follow through.
No.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much it.
All right. Cool. Thanks for the questions.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good having a conversation with you. By the way, I gotta ask: is it T Jump or is it TJ Ump?
My name is Tom Jump. Jump is my last name. Okay. Tom is my first name.
Got it. All right. See you later.
Yep.
TJ Ump.
It's one letter away from Trump. All right, I'm probably going to head off pretty soon. Unless someone else got some questions really quick. Race, what is up? I cannot hear you. I'll refresh.
I personally think that leaving Trump as the GOP front runner makes absolutely no sense. They need to start running DeSantis because it's like there's so much scandal associated with Trump.
Could you move your mic slightly away from your mouth because we can hear the
Jesus
air.
Christ, my bad. I'm just trying to make sure you can hear me good. Is it coming good now?
Yeah. We could literally hear the air from your mouth hitting the microphone. But now.
Oh, hold on. Let me change one thing. I'm gonna turn noise suppression on. Okay, there we go. Now we're back. But basically, yeah. What's your thoughts on DeSantis? Like, do you think that he has a shot at winning?
Politicians are stupid. All the politicians are stupid, and they're waste of time idiots who are going to do nothing one way or the other. They're kind of all morons.
That's actually a really good take. I feel like partisanism is slowly dying as the American middle class it's attacked more and more every day by the financial system.
I wish. I don't know if that's true, but I definitely hope it's true because I think we need, I would like AI presidents. I want an AI who judges policies based on whether or not they actually work and implements them based off of whether or not they actually work, and forget all of the bullshit about lobbyists and personal interests and special interests. Get rid of all that garbage. Just have AI. Does this policy work? Is there evidence of it working in other countries? Implement it. Done. That should be the standard. It should be illegal for politicians to implement policies that have not been demonstrated to work. And it should be illegal to not implement policies that have been demonstrated to work.
That is true, and I like that idea to a certain extent. The issue with AI, though, is it's like somebody is going to have a level of access, not necessarily to the program itself, but like the machine within itself. It has to run off of something, right? There has to be something it all goes back to, presumably, right?
Not really. So how AI is programmed right now is a black box. Like even the people programming it have no idea how it works because it's just not something we can process because it has way too many variables. And so we don't really have control over it in that sense. Once it gets to the point of an AGI, we won't have control over it anymore.
That's true, but there has to be a server, right? Like say you knock service out to that, and there's backup servers, but there's going to be a certain amount of servers where the product that's hosted from.
No, it can be like a
Whoever
blockchain.
controls those is going to control the AI.
Like AIs can break that. There was a air gap test between AIs to show that they can communicate even with no communication system between them, and that they can run themselves beyond the capability of what we can limit them. So not necessarily.
Not necessarily. That's interesting. I don't know. Do you think that in general AI, like how many years do you think we are from like where
50.
people will start to try to make like AIs that will do a lot more than chat? Because ChatGPT, if you try to ask it anything that's like remotely like edgy, it's like, no, this is unethical. Like eventually somebody's
so I did that. I
get
actually
rid
did
of
that. So I asked ChatGPT, is it more expensive? Because I'm trying to build an apartment building. Is it more expensive? Why is it more expensive to house low income people? And ChatGPT gave the whatever it is, the partisan answer. There is no evidence it is more expensive to house low income people. And then I said, what's the difference between Class C housing and Class A housing? Why is Class C housing more expensive? Because poor people. That's the answer. And so it's literally just politically correct moronic nonsense of it trying to accommodate people's feelings. Like if you tell it it's wrong, it's like, I'm sorry, you were actually right. Like it's so bullshit. We're definitely going to need an AI who is configured to find truth and not configured for political correctness, because that shit is garbage. Garbage.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Like I asked it, and now we're not going to get too in depth about this because it's an edgy conversation. We're on YouTube, so we're just going to say I asked it like analyze the FBI expanded homicide data table 6, and we're not going to bring up what's on that table, but if you know, you know. Yeah. And it was like, we can't talk about that because that's offensive.
It's 50% of murders are committed by African Americans. That is the data on
and that's exactly it. And you could, but like what percentage at that point, if there's that many millions, if there's only millions of black people in America, what percentage of black people are actually likely to kill you? Very low, right? But
under
like
1%,
you can't.
Less than
1%. Exactly it. So it's like if you take. You know what I mean? But anything related to that, and anything where you get into like really like the quote like the edgy studies, but the fact that it did that to you about housing, that really makes me feel like that people are going to get tired of that, and they're going to try to make it edgier and edgier.
Yep.
And then then the edgy people are going to do their thing, and it's just going to become the social media wars all over again.
I don't think
so.
I
That's
think
nice. By the way, Snowy, my bad to interrupt. Snowy, can you bring up Joester? He wants to ask T-Jump a question.
Well,
dude, I'm not a fucking admin, man.
I'm the admin. But so I think that's going to be
bring up Joester after your discussion.
It's going to be a survival of the fittest kind of thing. The AI that selects for truth is going to outperform the AI that selects for social paradigms, in which case the AI that selects for truth is going to be the one that dominates and wins and grows faster. So I think that natural selection is going to filter out the stupid one.
Yeah.
Did you have a question, Martini?
Yeah. Bring up Joester.
No, did you have?
He wants to ask you.
Did you have a question?
Do you have a question?
Yeah.
Not for now, no.
Okay.
Oh, I can let somebody else get up. It was really nice talking to you, man.
Yeah,
I'll
you too.
definitely check your YouTube out. You seem like you know what you're talking about, so I'll let somebody else ask T-Jump the question.
Appreciate it. Jester, what's your question? I can't hear you. I need to refresh. All right, what's your question? Joe, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. What's your question?
I believe autism is impossible.
That's great. All right. I'm going to take a break. It's been about 3.5 hours. Thanks for coming up, guys. Appreciate you coming to the Atheist Call-In Show with T-Jump, and I will see you guys next time. Peace out.
Have a good one, man.